We're back. I'd like to make a motion to return to public session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Awesome, 5-0-0. We are reviewing and revision of the agenda. We are going to take Mrs. Grantham's presentation first, or just to switch with the Performing Arts fundraiser, and we got the okay from you. So Mrs. Grantham, you're up.
Fantastic. So, good evening, everyone.
Ooh, sorry.
Hi, Siri. How are you tonight?
Sorry.
Well, I can't say how happy I am to be here, and I'm even more happy to have brought along with me a nice collection of students here this evening. And we are going to have a participatory presentation this evening. So I am going to introduce to you Jacqueline Hathaway-Rube, who is one of our Spanish teachers this year. Jacqueline has brought along with her several of her students in both 6th, 7th, and 8th, or 6th and 8th, 6th and 8th Spanish classes. And we're going to kind of show you what a day in the life in a Spanish class is when they're participating in full immersion. So, ¿hablas español?
Sí.
No.
Sí.
No.
No tonight. Come on up.
All right, and you guys get to participate too, so you guys can stand up.
Yay. I'm going to have you come this way.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
I took French.
8 years
I
of
took
Latin,
French.
Pas français.
Ven aquí.
Here, I got here.
Mano a mano. ¿Sí?
Okay, coming in.
Move the chair. No. We're all making. Key, guys, got room over here. Key. I'm hopping in.
Sí, gracias, sí. Okay, coros. Sí, coro. Coro. Okay, coro, sí, coro, muy bien. Coro a la rodilla de tu amigo, sí, estrecha. Y otro codo a la rodilla de tu otro amigo. Hola, amigo. Hola, amigo. Y manos en el centro.
I don't bend that way.
Y manos mano a mano. Rocas. ¿Sí? ¿Listos? Muy despacio para los adultos, ¿sí?
Sí.
Sí, ok.
Los estudiantes con un adulto.
Oh, sí,
¿también?
ok.
¿Sí?
Chico, joven, adulto, joven, adulto. Formamos un círculo diferente, ¿sí? Joven, adulto, ¿sí? Vamos, ¿sí? Muy bien. Joven, adulto, joven, adulto, joven, adulto. Muy bien, muy bien. Perfecto. Aplausos, amigos. Sí, súper inteligente. Ok, rocas. Súper despacio primero, ¿sí? Ok. Choco, choco, la, choco, te, choco, chocolate. Oh, los adultos son muy inteligentes, ¿sí? Ok, manos en el centro. Arriba, tocan las rodillas, tocan la espalda, tocan las caderas, temblan como Shakira. Y dos, tres. Dos. Hola, amigo. Oh, bien. Chocolate con tu amigo, por favor. Chocolate, ¿sí? Sí, manos en el centro.
Of my brain.
Arriba. Y tocan los pies. Tocan las rodillas. Tocan los hombros. Tocan los codos. Codo. Roca. Repita. Roca. Muy bien. Papel. Tijeras. Roca. Papel. Tijeras. Oh, chica inteligente. Aplausos. Muy bien. Tijeras. Papel. Roca. Mira, mi mano. Estoy nerviosa, ¿sí? Nerviosa. Miguel, ¿sí? Ok, con tu amigo. Roca, papel, tijeras, por favor, ¿sí?
You're good. Rock, paper, scissors every time.
Pie, pie. Pie a rodilla. Pie a rodilla, muy bien.
I can't do that very well. I heard Pete. I heard Pete.
Otra dirección, pie a rodilla. Ok, necesitas, amigos, necesita un amigo que tienen el mismo, similar color de pantalones. ¿Sí? Mira. Un amigo que tiene el mismo color de pantalones, ¿ok? Conecta con personas diferentes, por favor. ¿Sí? Sí, muy bien. Mira, negro, negro, sí. Azul, azul. Los jeans. Hola, nuevo amigo, ¿sí? Hola, nuevo amigo, hola, nuevo amigo. Oh, amiga, ¿qué color son los pantalones de la chica? ¿Qué color? ¿Qué color?
Azul.
Son azules. ¿Dónde están los pantalones azules? Oh, los jeans. ¡Oh, aplausos! ¡Muy bien! Ok, con tu amigo. Un saludo especial, ¿sí? Para ustedes. Un saludo especial, ¿sí? Grupo de tres.
I don't know what I'm doing. Okay. One more.
En centro.
Okay.
En cabeza. En rodillas. En
Cabeza. Boca. Papel. Tierras. Chocolate. Coro. Cabeza. Tierras.
Los adultos son muy inteligentes en la clase, ¿sí? Sí. Aplausos para los Un chico, un joven, ¿sí? Y un adulto. Conecta, por favor, ¿sí? Adulto y chico, conectan. ¿Tienes un adulto? Adulto. Ok, va. ¿Sí? Chico, adulto, ¿sí? Adulto. Ok, coro.
Sorry.
Amigos, los jóvenes, ¿sí? Necesitas describe tu adulto. ¿Es tu adulto alto? ¿Es bajo? ¿Qué color de pelo? ¿Qué color de ojos? ¿Sí? Con tu adulto, ¿sí? Describe tu adulto, ¿sí? Juliana, aquí, ¿sí?
I think she's saying describe them, but I don't know that. Hair color, clothes,
Muy amable, ¿sí? Amigo fantástico.
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Enfrente. Roca, papel, tijeras con tu amigo, por favor, ¿sí?
Okay.
Coro.
Oh, okay, we're back.
All right.
Oh, círculo. Ok, chocolate, una vez más, ¿sí? Ok. Chocolate. Oh, perfect! Let's give the adults an applause because that was. So, I love a kid to talk to an adult. Let the adult tell you what it felt like to be in Spanish, and then you tell them what it was like the first day it was to be in Spanish and what it's like now, and all the things you've learned so far. You have 90 seconds. Ready, set, go.
Tell me.
You can be free.
Yeah. Was she like doing the touching stuff too to help you understand? Oh, that's good. Yeah. Yeah, because you'd have no idea, right? Yeah, I had no clue, so you did awesome. You did great. Are you having fun? You like it? Good. Just scary, and I want to make sure I didn't embarrass you guys.
Okay, manos en el centro. All right, everyone, we're going to go around the circle and everyone gets to say a one-word takeaway from their experience in the circle today. What's your one word?
Nervous, I guess.
That's okay. That's a good one. It's medium. It's good to know our feelings.
Immersive.
Ooh,
Hard.
fun.
Engaging.
Awesome.
Fantastico.
Fantastico.
Well played.
It was fun, definitely fun.
Definitely immersive.
Active.
Fun.
It was fun. Fun.
All right, hands in the middle. What's our team cheer today? Because we've got cookies we need to go eat in the hallway. So galletas.
Chocolate, like she said.
Chocolate and tres. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Chocolate. Muchas gracias, amigos. Adiós. Bye, Maggie.
Totally fail Spanish.
They want to go back
I
to
obviously have no hand-eye coordination.
Why is there a random?
It's a lot of learning.
It did get hot in here now.
Okay.
It's awesome.
It's all that activity.
I wasn't prepared for a Spanish lesson.
I rushed.
Oh no.
You're gonna give your presentation now, Mrs. Grantham?
I don't really think the rest of my presentation is in the notes. I know
Yeah,
we
sorry.
talked last year about not sharing every detail of what's going on. I would say, just to give you a quick summary, it's been an awesome start to the school year. Our students and staff are reporting being really excited about what we have going on. I highlighted in there the best of the best, which the excitement in the outside right now kind of talks a little bit about what's going on, but we're really looking at changing the vibe of how things feel in the middle school, that kids want to be there, that they're excited to be there. And our staff has all been excellent and on board with a nice shift this year. We have a responsive classroom training starting on Friday, which we're really looking forward to, and so many good things on the horizon for us.
No school on Friday, correct?
No school for kids on Friday or Monday.
Thank you.
Did I hear at one of the recent meetings that there's a walkthrough planned at the middle school
There
again?
is
that
another
November 3rd?
walkthrough.
November 9th. Yeah, it's the same day as our
3:30,
facilities meeting.
Okay.
Yep. 3:30, we're going to meet in the cafeteria
Okay.
on November 9th for any community member or board member or anybody that would like to see what's gone on so far with our renovations. By that point, we will be finished with our next phase. Our next 3 classrooms will be coming back online and available, which is our Family and Consumer Science Lab, our 7th grade science class, and our other Spanish class will be coming online in just Tuesday, actually, of next week. So we're actually ahead of schedule in regards to when things are getting turned over to us versus when we thought they would be. And then they'll be moving ahead with the next 3 classes in the phase, and we'll be getting the library back sooner than we thought because we were not anticipating getting the library back until December. So Mrs. Provenza will no longer have a hallbrary. She'll have an actual library.
What time on the 9th? Is it 3:30?
3:30.
30, yeah.
I hear she might keep the hallbrary though for certain time periods.
It's been really successful. The kids have really enjoyed it. We have a Read for Teens is happening right now for the month of October. So there's been morning announcements each morning for kids to read a book, and there's on the library website. There is a page where kids can go, and every time they enter a book, they get a raffle. They read a book, they get a raffle ticket, which is an incentive to get them reading. So we're really looking forward to that. And we have, on the 3rd Wednesday of the month, will be our next top secret best of the best competition. Can't tell you what it is.
Best of the best.
Best of the best. We have competitions that are school-wide because best is all happening at the same time for everyone.
That's nice.
And like you might have seen our tower building excursion, and we actually had 8th grade came in first, but 5th grade was closely behind by just a few centimeters. So we're kind of leveling the playing field with what activities are being planned, and they're both STEM activities, music activities, you name it, we've got it, and we're looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Thank you. I know you have someplace to go.
I do certainly.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
I appreciate
We
it.
had fun. Well, I had fun.
Thank you, I'm glad. I wanted
Great.
it to be about the kids, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In my haste to see the Spanish presentation, I neglected to do the summary of non-public actions. Mrs. Harrison made a motion to approve the non-public minutes of September 7th, 2022. Mrs. Ames seconded. The motion carried 5-0-0. Mr. Cutter made a motion to authorize the school district to enter into a purchase and sale agreement for an identified parcel of land for the location for a proposed new elementary school. Mrs. Harrison seconded. The motion carried 5-0-0. Thank you. And now we have Performing Arts Fundraiser. If you want to shut the door, if it's distracting to you. Thank you.
Do you want us to come up, or can we just stay here?
You can come up
Mike's.
and introduce yourselves, please. Oh, you can. Actually,
So that was an awesome presentation. Now I feel like the guy that came in
It was
after the
pretty awesome.
Beatles on Ed Sullivan, but we'll try to make up.
awesome.
So I'm Jim Norton.
Brittany Milligan.
Susan Haley.
We're here to talk about two fundraisers we're trying to put together for the Performing Arts Department to help the kids pay for the Disney trip that's coming up, as well as just putting money in their music accounts for anything that they have. So I sent some documents along. The first one was a board purchasing fundraiser, so the kids could go sell cornhole boards to local businesses. And this has been done a few times for other organizations. They sell these boards, and for every board they sell, they get $200.
Wow.
So they sell enough boards, they could get at least half their money put into their accounts to help pay for that Disney trip. Pretty much just 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we're gonna be selling these boards. Then all the money we collect would go to this company, it's Wicked Cornhole. They're the ones designing and building the boards. They would cut CHS a check for all the money that needs to go into the kids' accounts, and then we would track all of the kids that sold the boards, get the check over to Brittany along with the names, and she would submit them into the accounts. And then the other piece, I'll let Mrs. Haley talk about that, is the event itself we want to hold at the CHS gym.
Yep, so it would be November 12th, and it would be hosted by 603 Cornhole. And we would use the sponsor boards as part of, advertising for them. And it's like a 6 to 8 hour event. FOPA would be there with concessions. I already have a bunch of gift cards donated for raffles, so, and that money would be split up. Kids can volunteer, and we would divide it based on the amount raised and the number of hours they worked, just to make it as fair as possible and go into their accounts, so.
How many boards do you think you can fit in the the auditorium?
Probably about 12 sets.
And you'd just be turning over people, but
Yeah.
that sounds.
Yeah, we could,
That's as many as you get at a venue.
yeah.
I think
So you
it's, what,
said-
20 to 30 teams?
It would probably be more, but we'll
Yeah.
say 20 to 30.
Haley's no cornhole.
Yeah.
You said this is a fundraiser that's been done before.
Not
At
for
other-
us.
Boards.
Okay, I
The
just wanna
board
make sure.
fundraisers,
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
we've done it for the New Hampshire Saints before, and like their girls go down to Florida or wherever for events for the championships, and they pretty much pay for their trip with selling just the boards alone, so.
Great. I make a motion to approve. Anyone else have any questions? To approve the two music department fundraisers?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Andrew? Thank you. Oh, it was
No.
Heidi. Were you, who seconded? I don't know.
Oh, I
Tara,
did,
okay,
yeah.
then don't ask me.
Just name a bunch of people and it'll be one of us.
You're all, you're all set?
That's it, we're ready to go?
That's it.
Excellent.
Thank you, guys.
Auditorium?
No, in the gymnasium.
In the gymnasium.
In the gym,
okay,
yeah. Not
gonna
the
fit in the
auditorium, in the gym.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did I say auditorium?
You did.
Oh, sorry.
That'd be interesting, though.
Thank you,
Have
guys.
the championship up
Everyone
on
has a
stage.
different fling style, you don't know. Oh my goodness. Thank you. And let's see, community comment. We have no community. Closed community, do I have to read this?
No.
Okay, closed community comment. Correspondence. Oh, Mrs. Ames has the pleasure of taking care of that.
So this turned into my job somehow. Yay! I'll tell you, I realized it when I was driving away. I go, oh man, now I'm stuck doing correspondence, but that's okay. I have a system. So I'm going to go through the correspondence. So on 9/22/22, there was an email from Mary Widman to the board indicating that she had not put a lot of time into the forum and therefore wanted to postpone the school board forum. The chair responded agreeing to postponing. On September 23rd, Jim Norton sent an email to the board requesting for the performing arts fundraisers to be added to the agenda, hence you saw them tonight. On also September 23rd, Tara Hirschberger sent an email to the board as a board member circulating budget committee feedback. On September 23rd, Derek Barca, a community member, sent an email expressing his disappointment with the selection of the homecoming court based on a student's alleged behavior and involvement in bullying. There was subsequent responses back and forth on that. On September 24th, John Brunel from the town sent an email to the board indicating that the power to the conference room table had been fixed and to let him know of any future issues. On September 27th, Andrew Cutter sent an email to the board concerned that there was still a deficit of $104,000 for FY22. Heidi Ames responded to that the $104,600,000 was paid from the B of A MLP. And then there was subsequent response from our business administrator confirming that prior response. Also on September 27th, Mr. Cutter sent an email to the board with a formal request for expanding breakout of project costs, and Dr. Jetty responded to that and indicated that that will be discussed tonight. On September 29th, Dr. Jetty emailed the board circulating the revised capital improvement plan prepared for the October 3rd CIP meeting, and discussed that it was discussed by the board and changes were made with facilities as well. On September 30th, Kim Queenan emailed the board on behalf of the select board indicating that the school district may not present to the capital improvement plan committee until the district can show, 1, that the 22 deficit is clear, and 2, there is a process in place to address the projected 23 deficit. And the select board meeting is on 10/17 if the district wishes to be put on the agenda for those items. And again, Dr. Queenan's email was sent on behalf of the select board and was signed by the select board. On September 30th, Michelle Flynn emailed the board circulating a draft of the agenda for October 5th. On October 3rd, Stephanie Silver, a community member, emailed Dr. Jetty but copied the board with concerns over the 1 to 4 grading scale that has been implemented and some teachers are using. A response subsequently was given by Mary Widman, our Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment. Ms. Silver responded, and Ms. Widman again responded to that, and the board was copied on each of those correspondence. On October 4th, the chair of the board, Liz McDonald, shared email correspondence from NHSBA regarding common practice or lack thereof for reviewing manifests and advising it may not be done in non-public. On October 4th, Liz McDonald, as chair, emailed the board sharing correspondence from the chair of the budget committee to the rest of the budget committee regarding questions, and that town legal stated, in summary, town legal has said that no RSAs were violated on the school district side. And then on October 5th, the chair also emailed the board to indicate that the manifest would be available for review at 4:30 today. And that is the correspondence that we have received.
Fantastic. You're way better than I was at that. Comment, superintendent, Dr. Jetty.
Yes, so a
enrollment.
couple of things, and I'm gonna take some time on the enrollment, because I wanna make sure that the board understands where we are. So the first link goes to the enrollment that we've seen this year. Not a lot to see, to be honest, if you look at it. What was on, the number of students who were on our books day one was 1,204 students. The number who actually showed up for school on day one was 1,182. So we had 22 students absent. We've learned from some families that, they had plans to be away through Labor Day and they just weren't quite ready to start school yet. And I think that's evidenced by the next count that we pay attention to, which is the first Friday. In this case, that was on September the 9th. And at that point, we had 1,207 students enrolled. So we had recovered the 22 absence and picked up 3 more. But the number that we watch, the number that really matters, is the October 1st number.
I was just
Because
gonna say, we do it again in October, yeah.
that's where we allow sort of everything to shake out. We trace down kids who haven't shown up, that we haven't heard from. We wait for enrollment paperwork to come from other districts, et cetera. And on October 1st, we had 1,206 students. So that becomes our official count. Obviously, October 1st was a Saturday this year, so we pulled those numbers Monday morning to say who was on our books at that point in time. And then Michelle and I met on Monday afternoon and began the projection report. So we take these numbers, we translate them into the projection report, and I want to walk the board across those because these are the numbers that have been given to our administrative team, and they will do their budgeting based upon the numbers that are projected here, okay? And that's everything from personnel, classes, et cetera. It's all based upon this. So if you would look on link number 2, called Enrollment Projections 2022. And at the bottom, there should be one tab for you, and that's the 2022 tab. There are other tabs that I've hidden because this shows the whole history of how we've been tracking this for about 5 years. And what I want to anchor you on is the orange row, which is the 22-23 projection. So in other words, last year at this time, we were saying, here's what we think is going to happen. And then the green row is what actually ended up happening. So I'll take this school by school. You'll notice that we were projecting Griffin would have 405 students, and we have 394 students. So we're off by 11, but it's a little bit lower than what we were projecting, but the number is not statistically different with that many. And if you backfeed it into the actual class sizes, the key variance is really kindergarten.
Right.
And if you look historically, the first year of full day K, we had 81. The second year, 76. The third year, 65. The fourth year, 82. It's really hard to predict how many kiddos are going to arrive in kindergarten. This year, it's 66. So it's the second lowest number that we've seen in kindergarten. But that becomes the number that we're going to project forward from, okay? So at the middle school, we were projecting 364, and we have 355 actually there. And the high school, we were projecting 421, and we have 412. So our original number was 1230, we're down to 1206. That ties back to the other chart that you saw, and all the grades are updated. So what do we do with these numbers once we have them? We're projecting 3 years out, and we're using a 3-year average in order to make that projection. So I'm going to walk you through an example. So if you look at 66, which is the number of kindergartners we have now, and you'll notice that next year they become the 72 first graders. And if you click on that cell, you will find that it is a combination of the 66 that we have sitting in our classrooms now, counting noses. There are 66 noses there, we've counted them. And we're predicting they're going to turn into 72. How do we come up with that? Well, if you work your way down below into the chart, you can see that 3 years ago we gained 3 kiddos between kindergarten and first grade. 1 year ago we gained 11 kindergartners, so it was a little bit different. And remember, this is all predicting off pandemic years, which doesn't make it any easier. This year we gained 5 over what we had predicted. That's a total change of 19 over the 3 years, or an average change of 6, rounded to a whole kid. We're not going to split kiddos when we do this prediction. So that rounds to 6 is what we have seen, and then 66 plus the 6 from down below becomes the 72 prediction going forward. If you understand that math and the way the spreadsheet is set up and triggers, then it just ripples across the board. You can take any grade level, you can look at what the 3-year trend has been, take that average number and then feed it back up into the chart, and that's how we end up with the predictions. So let me pause for a second before you go any further down in the chart, because there's more fun stats to come, but I want to make sure that we understand the way we're doing the modeling.
So I think the question is what happened in grade 5 and grade 9, right? Because if I look at it, I see 96 in 21, 22. Our projection of 1-to-1, but we actually went down to 95. So why were we so off on our projection for grade 5?
So grade 5 is 5 and 9 are two that we really have to pay attention to, because more opportunities open up to families. So there are some families who will say, I'm not going to stay in Litchfield Middle School. I may decide to attend another local school or a charter school or what have you. People tend to make those choices at the transition stages. The same with high school. You know, they'll say, I'd rather go to this educational experience than what Campbell offers. So those are tougher years. I mean, again, we're using 3-year averaging, but you can have a cohort effect that you can't predict for, because it depends on that particular group. It depends on how many friends might be going to another school. And I think the other unknown factor is still with the portability with Freedom Account money. We aren't sure what that impact is going to be yet. You know, last year we lost very few kids. Most of the families who took advantage of that money in Litchfield were already not in our schools. They were already attending somewhere else. But this is the second year of that program, so that's another unknown that could influence those particular transition years. So the 96 to 101 would have been supported. I'm looking at the numbers. I mean, you had, I don't know what it was 2 years ago, a year ago, but when you do the averaging, we were predicting that we would have picked up the 5 counties, and we just did not.
Well, I guess if I go back the year prior, we had 74, right? 74?
Nope, go back, you gotta go up and over.
83.
Oh, wait a second. 74,
The year before, we would have had.
74 to 83 picked up, yep.
Right, so are we forecasting typically that we go up, but this particular year we went down? I don't know.
We are predicting, so actually, we can look at that. We went from 92 to 92. It stayed steady. And the year prior to that, it was 91 to 95. So historically, we had picked up students at the middle school.
Right, so this year it went down for some reason.
Correct. And we'd have to do more digging to, you know, those are
Construction,
individual
whatever it might be.
stories to figure
right.
out, but. Yeah.
So I thought you said we were off by 11, but I count 24, because the projection was 1230.
He said off by 11 for GMS.
Oh, okay, thank
Yes.
you. So
And then it was
in
9
total,
for
it was
LMS, and then 9 for
okay,
CHS.
all right, so
Right.
24 total, okay.
Which
got
I
it.
have to say, that's spread out pretty evenly amongst the 3 schools. I mean, 9, 9, and 11.
I agree.
It's not all in one school
Yeah.
that there's a sudden drop.
Are there still people keeping their kids home because of the pandemic?
Uh,
I'm just curious, I don't know.
We have heard of a couple of those situations, but most people have returned back.
Yeah,
Most people
okay.
have gotten back to normal, but I think there are still a few. And the other factor is that I think there are some students with just general anxiety about coming back to school from having not been at school.
Correct.
And so that's not, I'm staying out because of COVID fear, but it's a direct result, I think, of the fact that we were in a pretty fearful time for some individuals for that time period, so.
Absolutely.
So, just a couple of things before I leave this chart. I just want the board to note, our 1206 this year is predicted to be down to 1097 in 4 years. And I want you to see that number. We are facing declining enrollment, not unlike every school district in southern New Hampshire. This is not a Litchfield thing. This isn't a bailing out of school, public school thing. It's driven by smaller families and smaller class sizes. If you look at the 18-19 school year, my first year here, Campbell High School had 4 classes of over 100. And now look at this year, we have 2 classes under 100, we have 2 classes over 100, and by the time we work our way down, we're looking at 83, 88, 91, 87. So the shrinking bubble that has been coming up through is now arriving at Campbell. and they will have gone from a school of 439 to a school of 349 based on this modeling. So they'll have lost 100 students in that window of time, 8 years. And that's just something that we have to reconcile. We have to deal with the fact that we have that declining enrollment.
So I have to ask, right, because of, if you watch any planning board meeting, right, there's a lot of discussion about developments in town and development off page and this, the townhouses going in at the horse farm. How does that growth factor into the model?
So I'm gonna come to that with the other tab in a little bit.
Okay.
But I'm gonna give you the answer, which is that, our folks who we consulted with, who gave us a projection out to 2030, they said that that's exactly what is declining. That's exactly what you see is decline in population. Families are smaller, people are staying in original homes longer, with empty bedrooms, and that's happening across New Hampshire. So it's sort of the aging population, and you have young people who are starting their families not living in New Hampshire at this point. They're moving to other states, right? So we have a little bit of a brain drain in terms of people choosing to move out of state. And so all of this is what's influencing that. So it's really easy to drive down the road and say, but there's gonna be 67 houses here.
There's gonna be, I'm gonna just throw out a number, I don't know if this is accurate, but I think it's directionally accurate, somewhere about 200 new residential homes and condos and townhouses in town that are being talked about, right?
I
If
agree.
everyone has
That's
one-
about right.
If everyone has one kid, right, and you know, some will have more, some won't have any,
Correct.
right? But you can factor in another 200 kids, I would think.
And the modeling that we've had done, and I'm gonna tie this back to it, says it's still gonna continue to decline.
Okay.
Because, when all is said and done, the families who are moving in, they're just not measuring up to adding students back into the population.
Okay.
It's tricky stuff.
Yeah.
Because if they're wrong,
That's why I'm asking the question.
That is
and
true.
if every one of those, so we're saying, well, on average, there's gonna be one kid, but if all of a sudden there are two, it's blown all this out of the water. But again, they have been eerily accurate with our numbers, since we've been doing this methodology, so it's worked pretty well.
But we're just talking in our neighborhood, all the people, 3 or 4 new houses that have flipped, of people with no kids. And 3 of them aren't gonna have kids because they're older. Yeah,
Right.
it's,
Well,
it's, the whole thing is
you-
fascinating. Yeah,
It's interesting.
yeah.
For sure.
So, let me move down. So the next thing is the chart that sort of drives the methodology up top. Let's look at the staffing projections. So I've given you where we were last year, the 21-22 school year. I've given you where we are this year, which is in green, and then the yellow is the prediction based on the numbers up above. So the only thing of interest to me is, if you look at 2 years ago, our class sizes at the elementary school required staffing of 5-4-4-5-5. Okay? This year, we're requiring 4-5-4-4-4. Part of it is that the class size goes up in 4th grade, so that's, as that last large class worked its way out of Griffin, that reduction to 4 came into play, and probably is gonna hold into the foreseeable future. The large class is the 1st grade, and 5 is the number that's there. We're predicting next year that class will have to increase to 2nd grade, so it'll become 4-4-5-4-4. We think that 5 will then, we're projecting that it will carry into 3rd grade the year after, and then it will no longer be necessary because the 4th grade class size increase will make it so that it's not necessary in the 4th grade. So Griffin will go back to straight 4s across the board with grade levels. And at the middle school, remember, we had the 4-4-5-5. We took that reduction this year based on population. It seems to make sense, and we're predicting to stay at 4-4-4-4. And we don't do this kind of modeling at the high school because it's a different game of class requests, department programming. You can't just cohort kids into a classroom, so it's a little bit of a different scenario there. But I want to pause on this because the marching orders to our team are driven from this, which is, Dan, you should be planning to have one of your first grade positions follow the students. It doesn't mean one of the teachers per se, it just means that position goes up to second grade. And he and I went through these numbers in depth, so he does understand them. And the other just comment I will make is that I've anchored all the principals back on their class sizes for budgeting purposes. So when you see Dan using the number 382 for times the supply amount, it's because it's coming from this. It's not some other projection. Everything should tie back to this chart so that we know where we sit.
Yeah, that was an issue a couple years ago, right?
Yeah, it was. All right, so then if you look at the NHSAA tab, which is the other tab at the bottom, if you remember, the NHSAA, we contracted with them to come in and do an enrollment study. Part of it was, if you're gonna talk about building an elementary school, you need to figure out what the right size school is. You don't wanna overbuild it and you don't wanna underbuild it. You wanna hit it based upon projections. They ran 3 models, a 5-year average model, a 3-year weighted average model, and a 1-year cohort model. And I liked that they did those 3 models because we were doing a 3-year average model, which was a different altogether. They then did a model average. They took their 3 models and said, what's the average of our models? So that ended up being 4 models. And then Michelle and I have plugged in the projection based upon our modeling to see where it lands. And I think when you look at it, you see that the 4 models, I guess, have some variability in them, but nobody's off by 100 kids here. You know, if you look at the variability between the models, I think we're in the right ballpark. And part of what we're trying to do is say which one of their models is best so that we can kind of track that going forward and help us to refine. And Andrew, to answer part of the question, they did housing numbers. They did a far more elaborate look at this by looking at housing numbers. They looked at births and all sorts of stuff. So we have a substantial report that came from the NHSAA that gets into more detail. And it was interesting because I pushed back on Keith Burke when he gave us these numbers. I mean, Keith, you know, but the horse farm, it's going to turn into a bunch of places and, you know, so forth. And he said, it's all about family size. And he's like, how many kids did your grandfather have? How many kids did your father have? And how many kids have you had? And I just went, yep, big French Canadian Catholic family, 12, shrunk down to 6, shrunk down to 2. Yeah. And he's like, that's what you're telling in terms of that story is the typical reaction that you get and why it describes this. It doesn't mean there isn't, you know, I think we were in a meeting and Steve Weber said, well, I blew your model out of the water. I'm like, okay, Steve, but,
yeah.
You know, by and large, that's the story that you see with this. And
so if I just want to make sure I'm reading it correctly, on the 22 tab, right, if I look at 25-26, we're projecting 1,097 kids across the schools. And if I go to the NHSAA projections for the same year, they're averaging 1,067 kids.
The difference is pre-K is in that 1097 number. If you look at the number next to it, it says 1057.
So we added that right on the edge, column U, we had to pull out pre-K because to make the numbers comparable. So basically 1161 is 1206 minus 45. Gives us the 1161. That's the comparative number that's plugged in because pre-K's tricky. I mean, look at those numbers. It's like 40, 41, 20 pandemic year, 37, 40 is our prediction. We always predict 40.
You
and this
stop
year,
at 40, don't you?
well, this
Isn't
year
that
we
the
have
cap?
45.
Okay, I thought there was a cap.
It depends on the individual students, what their needs are, and what our ability is to staff it appropriately. And remember, all students don't come 5 days a week, so it's a different type of programming. And so this year there are 45.
Well, and there's a lottery for it too. Was there a lottery again this year with a wait list? And
I believe that is accurate.
yeah, so it's certainly a popular program. I think the only other question I would have, and we can't answer it, it's just throwing it out there, you know, is pandemic. Is there going to be some sort of boom for kindergarten in a couple of years?
So let me tell you what I've read so far.
Yeah.
So across the nation, there was no boom. A lot of people will equate a pandemic to a power outage, right? So you have this, the blizzard comes through and all the power gets out and all of a sudden there's a baby boom.
9
that
months later,
occurs.
there's a
Yep.
big baby boom, yeah.
And that's not what happened with the pandemic, because people were nervous and unsure of the future. And so, it wasn't, the power is gonna be on in a couple days, it was, I don't know what's going on here, and so people actually delayed. So it may be something that comes further down the road, but initially, they said that nationwide, that's not the case. They did say New Hampshire was an anomaly, and New Hampshire's numbers were up slightly, but not anything that's gonna cause a huge boom. I think there's a bigger boom coming, and I'm gonna tell you what I think. The children who were born into the pandemic, so, were due in April of 2020, right? And they suddenly found themselves completely isolated in homes. Mom and dad were forced to work from home, and now they've got the baby, that they're trying to take care of. I think what we're gonna see over time is that that the needs of students arriving in our kindergarten are gonna differ from what we've seen in the past. By no fault of anybody, other than they were not born into a normal situation. They weren't going off to grandma and grandpa for baby cuddling and so forth. So all those things that you sort of rely upon didn't occur for a year or two because of the pandemic. And I think there's a long-term effect to come from that. I think our
Say that
kindergarten,
about 2 and 3-year-olds that weren't in daycare learning their letters or.
and I think our
Yeah.
kindergarten teachers are the front line that are gonna see it.
Absolutely.
And I think we have to really pay attention to our class sizes, because the needs in that group are gonna be profoundly different than what we're prepared for. And I think there's still research to come on it, but we're kidding ourselves if we think we're just gonna have a normal kindergarten when those students first arrive.
I might take it a step further and say the pre-K teachers may be on the front lines of it too, seeing the different needs. There might be more children that qualify for services, depending on, because of that. So keeping in touch with them in terms of what they're seeing in their rooms compared to prior years may be helpful as well.
All right, anything else on enrollment projection?
This is an annual update to the board? Okay.
At least, usually in the spring, we see it a lot more frequently.
Yes, when we talk about class sizes.
Yeah, we pull this out a lot. And the other thing is, just a reminder to the board, I didn't scroll all the way down, but we have added in the Strive For numbers at the very bottom of the chart. So the policy is linked there. We've got some notes that we've been making as we've gone up through this, so that everything is sort of captured in one spot, and then the not to exceed numbers and the resulting trigger. And this has been updated off of the latest version of the policy after it got rewritten. So I think it's accurate, but we try to make it one-stop shopping for you. So if that's a link that's worth having available or being able to find. So next, I want to just talk for a second. So Margaret Parent approached me and the board on behalf of the Historical Society, because, as you recall, a couple of years ago, the 1930 section of Griffin Memorial was added to the State Register of Historic Buildings. And so here's a letter from the society asking permission to put a plaque on the school. And you can see in here that Riker Van Morik is doing this as part of a Boy Scout project. So he's working on his citizenship and the community badge. He's working with the town on plaques for the Old Town Center buildings. I think there are 4 of them that are gonna be plaqued. And then they're asking to have the plaque placed with us. So I invited Margaret to come tonight, but she declined. She said, if you can just present it for me. And so 2 pictures. That's what the plaque looks like. It's actually a very well-done
awesome.
plaque. And I think, if I understood her correctly, that Riker is involved in, so there's a wooden base behind it that he has created for the plaque to go onto, and that's what it would look like when it's mounted. And it's a good sized plaque. That's, you can't tell by, well, that's a shirt box, so you can tell, think about a shirt.
Yeah.
That's how big that is, right?
Is that what goes on all historic buildings, or is that what he designed?
So I thought it was going on all historic buildings in the state.
Yeah.
And then, they've purchased that, and then he designed the wooden part.
Oh,
Because
nice.
it's gonna mount differently depending on the building,
Okay.
but the Historical Society wanted the dark wood, because they looked at the library, town hall, school, what else is being done? The, fire station, and they thought the dark wood would be the nicest look. And then Margaret, Dan, and I walked outside, and here is Vanna showing you where we
That was my
envision the
favorite
plaque.
part.
And so, it would be on the brick to the right at the top of the stairs, sort of eye level, as you get to the top, but still, you would see it from the loop if you pulled into the parking lot, and we're like, what's that? So,
Do those lights work?
to be honest, I don't know the answer. I
They
don't
don't really scream
I don't-
historic to me.
drive by Griffin at
Yeah.
night, but they're kind of Art Deco. They're 1930s.
So, are you looking for a motion for this?
I think a motion would be perfect.
Make a motion to approve the plaque placement on the 1930s building of GMS.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? 500.
And I'll refrain from my comments on Mr. Mitchell.
I thought his leg was up in the air.
We'll coordinate with Riker and Margaret from this
Cool.
point. So at some
I
point,
love it.
you will see that plaque up there. One last thing that I did not add to the agenda, but I just want the board to know that the emergency operation plans have all been signed.
Yes.
So Liz signed them on behalf of the board. Steve Weber signed for them on behalf of the town. So as select
We were
board
there
chair.
at the same time.
Yep, Liz and Steve had a signing party, I signed them all today. He will then take ownership and do the dispersal between police, fire, et cetera. And then Michelle's in the process of getting them uploaded, and they need to be to the state by, October 15th. So we've got a plan, we're gonna meet that deadline, and our plans will be done.
I
including-
appreciate that Steve stepped up and did that, since we don't have an emergency, a town emergency director
Yeah.
at this point in time, so
agree.
thank you, Steve.
Yes, absolutely, that was very helpful. And then one last thing is, I just want to share with the board an article. So I had a conversation with Gordon Graham today, just regarding CIP plans. And I've given you a link to this article from the New Hampshire Municipal Association. And I would ask you to read this, because to me, it's a really good grounding from a legally oriented organization in terms of what the law says, what CIPs are, the interface between various aspects of the CIP from the town, the school, et cetera. And I think it's worth a read before we try to figure out what our response should be on where we are with the CIP. So this is, I think there's a couple of spheres that we're operating in. You've got the legal sphere here, but there's a political sphere also, and we just want to, I think if we ground ourselves in the legal, and then we say, what's the best course of action going forward? Our CIP, I think is done, I think it's ready to go, but I just think this article may help the board to figure out what the next course of action is from the school angle.
And this is a 6-year projection on the capital improvement. A 6-year, so it isn't something we want done tomorrow. It's just some place marker for this needs to be done, like, and the town must have place markers for fire truck or something.
So I attended, the capital improvement planning meeting on Monday, and, I know that the last CIP was done, 3 years ago? And then, so it's been a 3-year update, but what I found out is that really the CIP is meant to be updated, it's meant to be a working document and to be updated every year. And COVID kind of got in the way of that. So it's not meant to be, just sitting on the shelf. It's a, working, livable document. And so I think that that's important to note, that really it should be in with our annual planning. And it hasn't, it's been it's been like driven by the committee.
It was the intention. In 2020, when we picked up that effort, it hadn't been touched in 7 or 10 years. It was a while, right? And the intention out of 2020 certainly was to have it be an annual refresh with a quarterly meeting to keep it live and keep it real. But then COVID hit, and then meetings were
Yeah.
canceled, and then we couldn't book rooms, and it was,
Yeah.
we all know the history there, so.
Right.
But you're absolutely correct. This is an annual
Yeah.
plan. It is just that, though. It's a plan, right? And that's important to, I think, remember.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that you're bound to ask on a warrant article the exact dollar amounts. Now, is that the right thing to do in the eye of the voter? That's to be determined, but it's a plan, right?
That's
It's
what
a guide.
yes, I agree.
Right. All right, so we'll read that article.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, that was added today, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I didn't see that one yesterday.
And we'll, if it's okay with the board, we'll bring the CIP discussion back under probably old business, I think, at the next meeting,
On the 19th?
on the 19th,
Okay.
if that makes sense, because
Yes.
we have the plan, that's been shared with everybody.
Yeah.
And now we have some grounding, and I think we just have to talk about how to respond to the email that we received.
Yeah.
When is the board meeting?
The select board?
Yeah, when was
The
that?
17th.
They invited us on the 17th, but I think, I'm
Decline
gonna
that.
suggest that we not take them up on that offer, and that
Okay.
we figure out as a school where we sit. I've also begun to collect some data from other schools on capital planning, and I've yet to find anybody who presents to a group like this. Everybody sort of has the school plan, and so it's just an interesting intersection for us to think about. But
That did come up with the New Hampshire School Boards Association on Saturday when I went to the delegate assembly.
Thank you for going to that, by the
Oh,
way.
sure, actually, it was very informative. But one of the presenters did mention that, it's the school that maintains the CIP. And then there were several other people that I inquired about that said the same thing. It's the school that maintains it, and it's not required to be approved by any town body or anything like that. I'm looking forward to reading this article and.
Yeah, I wonder
Yeah.
why, what is it, the NHMA? What's the board that helps us lead the?
Hampshire School
Nashua
Board.
Regional Planning.
Yeah,
Oh.
that one, yeah.
I
I'm
always
curious
thought-
as to why that was rolled in then, if that wasn't the general norm.
Yeah, I've talked to people in cooperative districts, and they're like, we can't communicate to 5 towns, we write our plan, this is what our need is, so, there would be no ability to go back to 5 different select boards and have that approved, and so, they also echoed that it is it's reviewed annually and updated annually, and as needs arise, stuff comes and goes from the list. But it's more of a planning tool for the school board to drive what the facility needs are. And then towns are aware of it, so they're saying, okay, what's the school doing and what's the town doing, but it's
That's what
just a
I
different
always thought,
interface.
like the town took care of like fire trucks and stuff like that, and we took care, I don't understand where the select board comes in with the school. That's where my confusion is, because I thought we were 2 different governing agencies. You're our employee, we're in charge of the school, they're the town, and they're in charge of fire and all the public works and all those other things.
I think the goal was cooperation and
Right.
collaboration, but I think somewhere along the line, that might have shifted a bit in some of what we've referenced it before, the underlying tensions and.
But the way I look at the CIP, and I was kind of reviewing this last night, that, it's not, the CIP has it broken down by departments, right? Like fire, police, school. So even within the town CIP, the school has its own section. So it's not ranking 1 to 10 all the projects in town. It's prioritizing them by department. So. I don't
Right, but
feel
then
like-
there's an overall priority. If you even go back to 2020, we all agreed, town and school, that the school was our top priority, right? So there will be a prioritization of all projects, I believe, at the end.
I thought that's why we did it, so the town wouldn't be asking for a fire station when we were asking.
That's
That
the
was
idea.
what, yeah, that's how I believed it.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
So it's interesting though, that's not expressed in the CIP.
No.
All of the projects have those 4 ratings, and there's not a singular ranking.
Right.
So, I just thought that was interesting.
So we'll bring it back under old business.
Okay.
I hope the article helps us, and think about it. I think this is one of those, let's just think about and engage in dialogue about the best thing to do, because I think it is about the spirit of cooperation. When I first came, there were, I don't know if it was quarterly or semi-annual meetings with decision makers to sort of talk about how we work together to benefit the town as a whole. Those have stopped, and so
So actually, along that spirit of cooperation, I know it was expressed in a prior school board meeting that we would be interested in picking up those meetings again with town and budget committee, and I think it was 2 budget committees ago. The first one I attended, I did express that, and the chair of the budget committee said he would be more than willing to attend those meetings, and so, and Mr. Leary was there as a rep of the select board, and he said he would bring it back to Mr. Weber. So I haven't heard back either way. So the invitation has been extended. So however we want to follow up on that or get an answer from them, just to let you know, the invitation has been extended.
I know the new town administrator will need some time to kinda get it down.
There is a new town administrator?
Yes.
Yes,
She
that was
started
just-
today?
No, she
Monday?
started yesterday. She had
Yeah.
a very long day. Hold it, what day is it?
Monday.
Wednesday. She started Monday, and she had a very long day because she came to the CIP meeting too. So.
What's her name?
Kim Kleiner.
Kim Kleiner, that's it.
Yes.
Kim
She joins us
Kleiner.
from Nashville, I caught that.
Yes.
Yes,
So
that is
she
correct.
was just leaving the office, so she had a very long day today, because Jen recognized her and knew her from Nashua. and
Yes.
said, "Oh, what's Kim Kleiner doing here?" And I said,
Jen knows everybody.
"So, all right,
Because
perfect."
Stephen told us that, Michelle, you were with us, he gave us her bio during the signing party. He's very excited.
Nice.
I think it'll be awesome.
We'll reach out and see if we can get something coordinated. then.
Awesome, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, can we move on?
Yes.
Everyone else set? Committee assignments. We asked Michelle to set up a, who the new people are for all the assignments. Did everyone get a chance? I did a correction.
Yeah, the thought process was we kind of played musical committees last meeting, so to have a look at where everybody is landing and making sure the work is well balanced between the 5 of us. Did everyone have a chance to look at it?
Yes. I just had that one change, but I can be the second backup to CIP if needed.
Thank you. I
Again.
appreciate you being able to come.
Sure.
Oh, I had them backwards here.
Okay.
I
I
just
could-
I'm
wanted-
sorry, Tara, your comment goes with the town CIP?
Yes. I
Yeah.
thought Heidi was the backup for that, but again, I went on Monday and I'm willing to go if,
Tara, you have a
as
lot
the
on your
third.
plate here.
Yeah.
A lot. Tara,
Tara does.
yeah. And you forgot the iron cutter. It just looks like cut. So I wanted the R added on.
Oh, it looks cute.
Or
Come on.
cute. This is how I spend my lunch
Which is
hours.
why I nominated Heidi for VP.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think it looks like I'm the second on a lot of them, but you've been doing the budget committee. I've been watching the meetings just so if I have to step in, I'm able to know a little bit about
Yeah.
what I'm talking about. But is this how is this what everyone wants to have going forward?
Wellness is quarterly, so there's a meeting on
That's
Tuesday.
your
I've
baby.
already prepared
That's your
for it.
thing.
I know, that's the one
So
You want me
that's
to
like
be
my
emergency
heart
manager?
thing.
Does Tara wanna be the backup for CIP, or is that moving to Heidi?
Maybe, let's think about that. Okay. Alright.
I'm open to whatever Tara wants to do.
What is, what time does emergency management meet? Is that the 3:30?
It's during the day, yeah. That's like a morning, so that
is
one,
it?
that
When
one
you take a
is
break from work?
monthly.
Like you work, do you take your
If
lunch
I'm
hour?
able
Yeah.
to come down, I do, but then sometimes I call in, so. That one, it's like 10 or 9 AM,
Oh.
so
Oh.
that's the thing.
That's a tough
Yeah.
one.
That's, yeah, I'm busy that time.
I'm assuming that's meeting with police and fire? Yeah, and the board's probably there,
Police and fire, and what?
the select board members.
They are not.
They are not
They
there?
have a different, I guess they have a different emergency management meeting.
Okay.
Did I hear Mr. Sargent is coming back?
Oh,
I did hear that. Mr. Sargent is coming back.
All right.
All right, no other changes.
Tara, you okay with
Are you okay with all
CIP
this?
backup?
Yeah.
well, my comment was I thought Heidi was the backup for that. So like I can be the double backup for that one, but.
I will be the backup
You
for
will be
Michelle,
back.
yeah.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Heidi, you're
I will
in
fix
grading.
that and post that for the board in the shared drive.
Andrew, do you have any interest in grading and reporting and competency? The only reason I'm
I don't know
asking
anything
is
about
it's
it.
once a month.
Good
Maybe there's-
opportunity to
It's a hot
learn.
topic these
It's once
days.
a
Yeah.
month,
It's out
but
of my
it's
wheelhouse.
also Zoom.
Oh, okay.
So that there are Google Meet. There's an opportunity to attend remotely, but it is 3:30 on the third Tuesday of the month. So I didn't know if that was something that you might be interested in, just to.
3:30, third Tuesday. Allow me to look at the calendar?
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Just let us know.
Thank you.
Okay.
Great. And Andrew Cute is gonna have an R.
So I'm just gonna throw this out there because the New Hampshire School Boards Association meeting was really phenomenal. I would highly recommend it, because the first presentation that was given was, a gentleman who's a school board, I think he's the school board chair now, of a cooperative district. I'm sorry, I can't remember which one it was. But he was presenting on this amazing process he developed to review policies. And it was everything in the spreadsheet. There is, in their district, they have a subcommittee of the board that reviews policies. And the policy changes are driven by the board versus the admin, you know? And it definitely takes
Time.
absolutely time and effort. But he had this amazing model and he was willing to share it with people.
Can you share it with us?
I don't have it yet,
Okay.
but I can ask
So
the School
if-
Boards Association.
Just if I may.
Yeah.
You all got a summary email from the School Board
Yes.
Association on Monday. There's a link in it, and it's called Monadnock's
That was it.
presentation.
Monadnock.
Okay.
Yep.
And if you click the link, it's the PowerPoint that Tara's referencing.
It was
And it includes exactly
phenomenal.
that.
The first thing was, it starts off with the New Hampshire School Boards Association. I think the cost was around $2,000. They would do literally an audit of all of our policies, and they would come up with, okay, they would give you this list, like where do you align with School Boards Association, where do you not? He had them also add into this spreadsheet, like which policies were required, which ones were not required. And so from that audit, he was able to pull together a group of people and start looking and digging into those policies and saying, okay, and he came up with a priority system, you know.
Is this for the whole cooperative?
For the whole
How
cooperative.
many people are on the, we're only 5 people. We can
I
all,
know,
and we
he has
all
a
work
board of,
full-time.
I know,
Yeah.
he has a board of 9, so, but maybe it's a community thing that could somehow help out, or maybe there are a couple people from the school that are assigned to that committee. I don't know, it would be more collaborative and not just all on the SAU to do. And it was just phenomenal because he came up with this priority of how he was gonna address things. Student policies were top on the priority, anything related to students, and then it was staff, and then it was, you know, anything that the board agreed to relook at, and then the fourth priority was, you know, something that an individual had brought up. But anything that an individual had brought up would have to be approved by the whole board before moving forward and reviewing. I just was so impressed. I mean, he had a graph of where things
see it?
stood.
Mike, did you check it out or did you
The
just?
presentation,
Yeah.
I did, yeah.
Can
It
we all
was.
take a look at it and we'll talk about it next meeting? Do you
Yeah.
have any-
Was that shared with the board, you said?
It should have
It's
come,
in
it
your
should have come.
delegation email.
NHSBA sends an email with an
Can you
update.
flip it to me?
Yeah.
That might
Let-
be one that I deleted thinking it was spam.
Yeah.
I'll tell
It
you what,
was a
I will
really
add the
great
link,
presentation.
I'm gonna add the link to this agenda under the CIP article that you're all gonna read and go back and
Okay,
look at.
there we go.
Okay? All right.
All
That's a
right.
good way to make us read it.
Yeah.
I used to be a teacher, you know.
Any other school board comments?
I have a few, but I'll let everyone else go
I
first.
just have one. Last week it was brought up about our stipend. And if you choose to give your stipend back to the district, that's between you and the SAU board. It's none of my business, anyone else's business. So if you choose to give your money back, I believe we would talk to, who would we talk to, Dr. Jettie?
Holly, right?
To give the money back,
So are you just
payroll,
declining it,
Yes.
or are you gonna receive it and then turn it back as a donation?
whatever is easier.
It's probably, I'm looking at Doug. It's probably easier to decline it to begin with.
That would be
And the
easier.
taxes
Okay.
aren't taken out.
So I think if you are so inclined to write a letter to Doug,
Perfect.
and just state, you know, and again, it'll be a private matter between a board
That's-
member.
yeah.
But you just state, I will respectfully decline the stipend this year, and then it'll save some accounting work on his part, so.
Great.
Yep.
Awesome. That's all I gotta say.
Am I good on that?
That'd be great,
Okay,
yep.
Awesome,
there you go.
thanks.
Email to Doug.
Anyone else?
Yeah, one second, making note. So just a couple of minor things, well, I think they're minor. On the Litchfield School District site again, it says our meeting start time is still 5 PM. I know I mentioned that, and that's still there. Do you see this?
Change that.
On the website?
Right, on the website.
Today it was
school
on the
meetings
website.
will
Yeah.
be
No, it
5
wasn't, it
PM.
was 6.
No, we started at 5 with non-public.
5 p.m.
Yeah.
Right, so that's what
Might
I'm
be another
referring to.
page there that I missed.
So we are going to start at 5:30 from now on, and the manifest will be available at 5 o'clock for us to look at.
So
Well, I'm here
here,
at 4:30.
Oh, perfect.
here at 5 o'clock or by 4:30?
I'm usually here around 4:30.
I came early to look at it, and I think someone else did.
Although
And I
we're,
think they're available at the SAU before that too, by
Yeah,
like
so-
1-ish, right?
we
By
have them
Friday.
available after lunch in the office, and then Michelle is coming 30 minutes before the start of the meeting to do
Great.
it. And we did have some I mean, people were showing up nobody knows when the meeting starts, so.
No.
uh,
To pick something.
People were showing up at 5
Stick
o'clock
with
out
it.
there, and I'm like, the board's in non-public now, they'll be ready at 6, but like Jim Norton was here at 5 something,
Correct.
so. So what's our start time? We're doing
5:30.
5:30 is what the board voted on, right?
Yes.
Decided
board
on.
Yeah.
public or non-public? So we can't do the manifest in non-public, that's
Right.
illegal.
I-
So,
I think we should start at 5:30. My personal preference, and if you wanna come early, I would appreciate if 3 people came early to look at the manifest.
Public?
But it can't be a quorum.
5:30.
It'll be public,
public start at 5:30?
yes.
Okay, so then Michelle will have the manifest here
can
at
put that on
5,
Facebook
if you
too.
wanna come and look at it in advance. Is that fair?
Is that fair to
I'll-
everybody?
Yes, I'll have a manifest question, I guess, now or when we get to that.
I also have sticky notes for the next time when you come early.
me to
we
wait
can
on
put
that
them
one?
here. Well, that Heidi
Yeah,
Brown.
Or do you
that's
want me
the end.
We can put
Ask you
together.
now.
I mean, it's on the agenda, but if you wanna ask now, that's fine. We
Yep.
can-
Again, one of the things that's helpful for the manifest is a summary, right? And I know one of the things that we talked about is even if it's just that front page that's part of these manifests, so we can see it in advance, that way when we're going through it, yep, we know what it is, it reconciles, yep, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so the summary that's already included in there, you're just talking about just seeing it in advance. like
Just seeing, it so I can
before-
run down and see, all right, this
That's
is what's
what this
scheduled to
is?
pay.
Yeah.
That's- Yeah,
Yeah,
and this is a signature page.
Right, but I think that might mean a slight change in process, right? Because you're preparing manifests really up until 12 PM the day of our meeting.
yeah, well, Anna's, yeah.
Cor-
so, yeah.
Correct, correct. Does it have to be that way?
No, it's just to get those checks out in a more timely manner, but I mean, if
They can wait
they can
14
wait.
days, right?
they
To the
can,
next,
yep.
right, I think in order to have a little bit more control over the manifest process, I think we have to stop it at a certain point so we have time to go through those summaries. I don't know if that's on Friday when Michelle posts the agenda, or if that's Monday, I don't know.
Can we, I mean, as part of this conversation, is there policy related to the manifest?
Oh, I've been looking. That's what.
Moving forward,
It's such a
Yeah, I've been
gray-
talking to Barrett. Cause it has been such a,
the only reason I'm
Gray
asking
area.
is if it's a topic of I mean, I think at one point we discussed, it's pretty antiquated, it's a pretty old system. Is it something that still needs to, is it something that is still required? Is it being required because our policy requires it, or is it being required because it's required by the state?
Well, so the concept of, you're the fiscal agents, so signing the manifest is the way to say, you know, every penny that's gone out of the school district, because it's all tracked there. So even though now with electronic payments and so forth, you know, it's the old, you know, it used to be the manifest had a physical check attached to it, and you would be able to lay eyes on that physical check. Well, now they're all electronic payments for the most part. Payroll, I think we have 2 people that get a check at this point, so, so that's what makes it somewhat antiquated, but,
So you'd want this like in a spreadsheet that we can look online prior to the meeting?
I just, again, if we're the fiscal agents and we're in charge of knowing every penny that goes out of it, I think we need more than a half hour to look it over.
Yeah,
agree.
and that's why in my view, I think it's best, you tell me if this just is not doable to work out, but when the agenda is sent out on a Friday afternoon, if we stop, that's our cutoff. That's our cutoff, right? That way we have time in our agenda, there'll be a link to the manifest items, just like everything else is attached. We can review it over the weekend and approve on the Wednesday.
Not the documentation behind it,
No,
but
just the summary. And I'm not asking for anything else or anything that you're not already producing.
Yep.
I think that
Because
makes
then we
sense.
can look at whatever we might have a question on and say,
Mhm.
wow, that looks higher than. I've gotten to the point now where I kind of have an idea of what payroll looks
I
like.
know,
and
I do
have-
too. I know the
see
number.
things
But
now
also-
that are out of the ordinary, and so if I saw something, I could make sure and see the backup documentation when I got here a half hour before.
Love that, right? And I also like the fact that we can go back to past agendas and say, all right, well, this was this particular run. Why is it different from this particular run? You know what I mean? So if something's really off, we can go back and look at that.
So then do we hold our questions till the meeting, or I just am afraid, I don't wanna inundate you with even more questions.
I think
Do
we
you know what
hold
I
them
mean?
to the meeting. I think
Hold them
it's
till
the
the meeting.
goal is to educate us, right?
Yeah.
And give
I
us
agree.
the ability to have the knowledge, and the time for questions is at the manifest time on the agenda, not to inundate Doug with
With 1,000
questions.
questions.
I think that's a great process, but I think the
So-
risk to you is if we have questions that can't be answered, we can't sign.
Which is
Well-
how it should be right now.
But
Right.
that delays payments, and I just wanna make sure.
That's my concern, is that if we cut it, if we have a cutoff the Friday before a meeting, we're not signing off on.
You're waiting
on
5
those-
more days.
You're waiting, yeah.
Well, then we might have to make some type of trip to the SAU to sign off when our
That's-
questions have been answered.
Yeah, so we're very timely on how we pay bills, and so if we back it up till Friday, that's not gonna cut our timeliness. I mean, it will obviously by a couple days, but overall,
But
it's
not
gonna
2
be fine.
weeks.
But then you
No.
catch up, right? After the first cycle, you're catching up, and it's always.
Yeah, I mean, it's, won't be as timely as we were before with some of the bills, but we're more than timely enough. I think, you know, what Liz is alluding to, there might be a time where we might say, oh, you know, we really need to get these 2 things out. Can 3 people come in and sign off on these 2
I
things?
have no
That's
problem
But I
with
think
that.
that would be
Request.
far and few between type of thing, because
Or
it's
even a
an
question.
it's an organized process, so. And Ann does a great job on it, so.
Okay, I think that's reasonable.
Do we need to vote on that?
All right, so we are talking about Friday do we wanna give like a time of noon?
Well,
That
I
kinda-
think Friday, whenever the agenda's sent out, right, under manifest, we include a hyperlink with
For
a
me,
summary.
even if it's Friday by 5 p.m.,
Yeah,
I'm
Friday
fine
close of
with that,
business,
because
yeah.
I review everything
On the
over
weekend.
the
Over the
weekend
weekend.
anyway.
Okay. Friday by 5, we would have the summary sheets
Yep, I
linked.
love this.
And therefore, the manifests themselves would be available at the SAU
Correct.
as well. All right,
We'll also have our questions. Could we send them to him prior to the meeting?
That's what we were just
Yeah,
saying.
yeah.
I
We
think
don't wanna
we,
inundate them.
we
you can
don't
send them to
wanna
me, I just might
create
not
more
answer them
work.
to the meeting.
But you'd
type
be
of thing.
ready,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that's fine.
yeah.
Okay, as long as there's not that expectation to hear back necessarily.
Yeah,
And
if
I
you send
never
them
have
at
a
Saturday
problem
at like
swinging
9
by the
AM, I'm not gonna.
Right.
I go by the SEU coming home. Excellent.
So make sure, so it's one hyperlink with a series of all the summary sheets just
Yes.
following behind it, right? Just a
That's it.
series of them.
Yeah.
It's not all the backup material
No.
per se,
No,
it's just.
That will come on Wednesday.
If you
It'll
wanna
be
organize
this.
between payroll and other, or whatever the folders are.
This I consider the summary.
And Doug,
Yeah.
you can prepare that one summary relatively
Well,
straightforward.
I think Ann's just gonna she's gonna take the summaries, just put them right behind each other, scan them in, and just send out that
Put my
scan.
teacher hat on, see?
Right. Yep.
Now you're being.
The one thing I'm gonna say, I know we've simplified it saying we're just holding, it's like 3 days shift, right? It's gonna drive Ann crazy,
I
just
know
so
it
you
will.
understand. She is so efficient that she wants the bill that arrived in Wednesday morning's mail, you know? So I'm just saying, Doug, we have work to do, and we'll do it because
You can blame us.
it's the
Manage
reset, but if it's the right thing for the board to do, to take its fiduciary responsibility.
Absolutely.
Then we'll work internally to make that happen. I mean,
I
that's-
appreciate the prompt payment, but you tell me, right? I would anticipate most of our bills being a net 30 type of arrangement anyways.
Yeah, not 30, not 45
Right,
type of
so-
thing, so.
We're
Yeah.
still weeks ahead of likely when the payment would be due.
Yes.
So,
Awesome. All right, so we're all on board with that? We understand the process?
Yes.
Great.
So, and just a quick question, I'm gonna link that hyperlink in the agenda, correct?
When you
When
send
I
the agenda out
post-
Friday.
Yep.
It will have the hyperlink from either Doug or Ann.
Okay,
Provided to you, or Doug can add it in, so
Yeah.
he'll figure out the.
just was
Yeah.
curious, I just wanted to make sure, okay, got it.
Great.
Yeah, if you send out the agenda at 1 and Ann's getting used to kind of putting it at 3, it'll go in
I
at
send
3
it
type of
out
thing.
between 1 and 5.
Yeah.
It depends on if I have everything. I'd like to send out as much as I can. Sometimes I don't have everything, so.
In that process, I don't think we're changing, right?
Okay,
Nice and easy.
perfect. Thank you.
Great.
There are a few other points. On September 21st, we received emails as a board from Mr. Morrison and Mr. Barker regarding Wi-Fi emails and highlighted student safety concerns with that. I'm not sure if there was any action behind that or what the next steps are.
So, two things. I have had communication with Chris Jamrog, who is our IT director. Part of the reason why Wi-Fi access is not, well, we started the year with it not available to students. So there's two things that are going on. We're really trying to teach students to put the devices away and focus on school and not be focused on
Gaming.
likes and whatever, notifications that are popping up.
Yeah.
So this is, in particular at Campbell, this is happening in high schools across the state. Everybody is struggling with, we've got to teach kids to get disconnected,
They're addicted.
They
There are
are
a lot of
addicted.
kids addicted to it's-
and they need to focus on their studies as the primary thing. So, huge article in the Concord Monitor this weekend about Concord High, because they've said you can have the device out at lunch, but not during class time. And Mike Reardon, the principal, has just demanded that teachers have to be on board. A teacher can't say it's okay in my class. This is not okay at school, and we have to teach students it's not okay during academic time. So there's that aspect of it, right? The other thing is that the way the old network had been set up, there were security concerns because we have an obligation to know whose device that is. It has to be linked back to an individual. They have to accept that they are using our network because we're accountable for what is on there. And that's part of why it had been shut off in the past. I'm sure you know that students have already, within a few days, they had gained access to the network.
And it makes it easier for them to game and do all the other
And
stuff, yeah.
we think it's as simple as the lovely iPhone that says, would you like to share that password with somebody? And now all of a sudden, it just takes one, and it's like an infection, it's just gonna spread. So now the password's out and students do have access at the high school. But Chris is concerned about it because the network doesn't meet the requirements that we have. So he is in the process now of costing out the software that would be necessary to properly meet the privacy requirements and data protection requirements that we have an obligation to meet. And he'll be coming forward to me and Doug with, here's what it's gonna take to become compliant this year. The whole idea is that there would be a public Wi-Fi that a parent attending a meeting could log into, a student could log into, but they have to go through a protocol and they have to accept on their phone, and it's gonna capture data on who that is, what that device does, and so if somebody's doing something inappropriate on our network, it's gonna capture that they were doing something inappropriate.
That's no different than that's no different than an airport, right?
Right.
You log
Right.
in,
Or
it
doctor's
makes you-
office.
Yeah.
But that scares me that we can't follow what some of the kids are doing.
So,
Or get
I think my
The
concern
staff
is-
BYOD policy, like I'm on the network with my device, I don't even know the password.
Yeah.
Chris took my phone and typed in whatever, that's how I got on, and he swore me not to share it with anybody, so I haven't. But he also knows it's Mike Jetty's iPhone, and so, that's not universal across the board with all devices, so that's the problem. We're working to get it resolved. I can't tell you if that's a 2-week fix or a several month fix, only because I don't know what it's gonna cost yet, so, we need to have that answer.
So that addresses Wi-Fi, right? I think largely. What about cell, right? Because in the schools, there's no, in all 3 schools, there's no cell signal.
There've never been because of the
But
concrete
is that
blocks.
a block that we have in place? Like, why is that?
It's against the law to have a block.
Okay.
So we are not able to put a magnetic fence around our schools and block out cell signals. That is completely driven by the cell carriers, who, I mean, I have a suspicion, I'm just gonna share my suspicion, having commuted up and down I-93 for several years, the cell service is degrading, and I think.
It is.
I think they are investing into Wi-Fi because that's where people are migrating to, so I don't think they're fixing the towers or directing the towers, that's just my guess, because I'm dropping calls
All
when
the
I'm
time.
in populated areas where I've never had a problem, and
But
so.
Andrew, in every school
Or
I've
they're
worked
throttling
in,
my iPhone down, I'm not sure which
They've
one
never
it is, they
had-
want me to buy a new one.
every school I've worked in has never had, we all know you have to stand at the window and wait for the wind to blow us, it
So
has.
it's not unique to us.
No, I think is it the concrete blocks? I know, I don't get service in Hudson anymore coming up the main drag, that just happened. I missed part of the joint loss committee meeting, it's weird, it's
When I
happening
talked to
more and more.
Verizon about my experience, what I was told is, well, we're not paying attention to commuters anymore because fewer people are commuting. We're now trying to get it into households. And I'm like, well, if that's the case, then the school service should have gone up and the highway service should have gone down. And what happened is this went down and this didn't go up. So I think it really comes down to what are you gonna invest in? And Wi-Fi has become the way, right? We all rely on Wi-Fi in our homes, so that's my own personal theory on this, but.
Interesting.
So I think, at least a brief response to Mr. Barca and Mr. Morrison is probably warranted.
Yep.
Right.
Why don't I take that on, because I had to get the answer from Chris, and frankly, I didn't follow up with either gentleman, so let me do that.
Cool.
But I wanna, everyone has their walkie-talkies, so if Mrs. Grantham's in a corner of each LMS, she will have contact with other people and you and the SAU, cause you have different channels, right?
So that's what's coming. So John Brunel is in,
That's, well, currently at each school, that's available, so what,
Yeah.
but they can't communicate across.
well, the high school
schools.
can communicate with you, yeah, so it was at each school that the radios work. What's coming is the repeater, so it can work
With the-
townwide and school to school and
So you
and school
just,
to police.
yeah, that's what scares me, is that there was no way to get in touch. So if Mrs. Grantham, I hate to keep using her, is carrying her walkie-talkie at some point, she can call the police on her two-way radio walkie-talkie.
That's what's coming. Right
Yeah,
now,
that's what we
she can
need.
communicate with Martha very effectively within the school.
Right,
What's coming is that she'll be able to directly contact first responders by using the town's network, and she'll be able to call school to school. So if she has an emergency and she's like, saying Mayday, Mayday, we'll have a device in the SAU, we'll hear that, right? We'll know something's going on at the middle school, is my understanding of the way
when
it's
is
gonna
that
work.
coming?
So we put in for the first round of the SAFE grants, everything we put in for the first round was accepted, so that's the repeater at the high school, repeater at the middle school, as well as radios for each school. John is trying to lock down the price for the high school, because we already had a quote for that, and so we've been, the grant has been, we know we're awarded the grant, but it's not into the grant management system yet, so I sent an email out, said, can we start spending this, because this is all about security type of thing, I haven't heard back yet. And in the next round, which we haven't heard back for the SAFE grant, is the elementary school.
Okay.
When we first put in, they said the elementary school had a repeater, but as you can imagine, that repeater's older by now, so we wanna kinda update it to the same repeater that the other schools would have.
Does that help, Andrew?
Yeah, look, I just wanna
Awesome.
make sure, given the importance of that topic, I felt like it was just worth it to bring it up.
So,
I think our initial thought, by the way, on GMS was, again, we're so unsure about the future, but this is the kind of thing you can bring somewhere else if you need to. So we were like, let's apply for it because it'll be up to date, online with the other three schools, and it can always be moved, so, and I cut you off, Tom.
So regarding cell phone service, as I think the board knows, a couple months ago, I wrote a letter to the governor asking for support for cell phone service in the town of Litchfield, because we were like the only school district in I don't know how many years to have a triple evacuation at the same time of all of our schools, and we realized what a problem it was to have no cell phone service or limited cell phone service. And so I'm wondering,
Did
does
he write
anybody
back?
here?
Did he-
No, but I sent it to his chief of staff, I believe, and she said she forwarded it to the policy department there. But I guess, as a board, since we're on this topic, is there an action you think that we should take as a board? Either, I don't know, writing to Verizon, writing to some of these cell phone places, writing as a school board to,
I honestly
the
think the
governor.
BAE across from the Tabernacle School might have a force shield against it. That's a secured environment that might interact or whatever. I don't know.
I think it's a good question, right? For me, I think the immediate resolution and next step is solving Wi-Fi. And if we can get some numbers behind that and understand that a bit more, that to me is the next step. Right, cause then anybody can use it,
Call.
yeah.
I mean, I think Andrew's right, that the Wi-Fi is the answer. When I get home now, because the cell service in my hometown has gone so bad, I turn airplane mode on, and I use my Wi-Fi for
Yeah.
calling, everything. Because it seems like when it's getting that one bar, it's I'm dropping calls and it's confusing. The minute I turn airplane mode on, I'm golden.
Oh, that's
So
good to know.
you unconfuse the phone and say, just use that. Don't try to pay attention to that other weak signal, and it's much better. So I think that is the right answer for us, and once we get it so that students and staff can access it reliably. And what I don't know is outside of I'm in the iPhone world, so I don't know how it works on the Android side, but I can't believe there isn't Wi-Fi calling on the Android side, or is there?
There is.
There is?
There
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, yeah.
So
But
that
you're
will,
concerned about not having it at Darrah and
that'll
all these
resolve
other
it, I think.
places.
right,
You're yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's a town issue,
Yeah,
not
that
ours.
there shouldn't be a block. But you're right. When we were there at the fall festival, I didn't have cell signal,
Yeah.
and
And that's
like AT&T
providers.
worked,
Yeah,
but
that's-
Verizon didn't work,
It
Xfinity
is.
didn't work.
I know.
So
Has it always been like that?
I have no idea.
I don't know either.
I have T-Mobile, it works pretty well.
They use Verizon, I thought they used, anyway.
There's,
To
there's your
T-Mobile
marketing
then.
tip, right? Sign up for T-Mobile.
I still have cell service.
Do you have any other comments?
I do. Stage crossing, I intended to bring this
Oh,
up at
yeah.
our last meeting on September 21st, but it got away from me with everything else that happened that evening. Stage crossing did reach out to me at the time, expressing interest for the board to meet as a part of our community outreach that we had asked for. They have a team or a number of residents that would like to have that informal session with the school board or members of the school board. I did forward the contact over to our chair, and I'm not sure where that is in the process, but just so you know, they did
I'm not
reach
sure I
out,
got that.
and they are interested.
Can you send it again?
Yeah, you acknowledged it, but.
Oh,
I'll
did
send
I?
it.
I'm sorry. There was a lot going on. But how would,
Right.
as a board, how would you like to proceed?
Well, it's that whole community outreach where we mentioned, you know, there should be two members.
members.
Yeah,
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 I don't mind meeting. I don't know which one's stage.
The one by the library.
yeah.
Oh, okay, the one up in the back?
It's just a matter of calling Mr. Poulos and saying,
Okay.
this is when we can be available, what works for you, and just coordinating schedules.
Okay. Excellent. I will do that tomorrow.
Cool.
Anything else?
Yep. The oversight committee, I know we had a lot of debate at our September 21st meeting on the financial oversight, that there was a lot of talk about that on the 19th from the community. I'm not clear where that landed as a board. I went back to the minutes, we talked about oversight for, communications? Yes.
If you wanna hear it, I'll tell you.
We do, just one sec. The oversight committee, I looked through the minutes, oversight was mentioned 7 times, but there wasn't a resolution of what the board's next steps or actions are. And so I just wanted to follow up with the board and where that is, or what our thoughts
I
are.
thought we talked about getting someone else to look at it, like maybe another,
So I can update
Okay.
you from the budget committee perspective. There's gonna
Excellent.
be a conversation tomorrow regarding what assistance the budget committee can provide from an oversight perspective. So maybe, and they provided a number of different RSAs as reference, so maybe based on that discussion, we can have, I think that there is gonna be a document that's gonna come out of that. I don't know if it's gonna happen exactly tomorrow, all tomorrow, but, I think that, that's one piece of information that maybe we can take a look at and, and have a discussion with that in our hands, saying, okay, what does this solve for us, and how does this help, and how does it build trust, and then,
that's fair.
That's one
So
thought.
you're gonna talk about it tomorrow night?
Yeah.
Okay,
Cool, so we can wait maybe till our next meeting and have that as a talking point on our agenda?
absolutely. And do you want, everyone want your notes from the meeting or anything, or watch the meeting so we can find
Yeah,
out?
watch the meeting. If
Perfect.
there's a document that is developed or shared, I'll be sure to
Share it
send
with
it
the board.
over.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I know there was conversation about the budget committee having oversight clearly of the budget process, right, and the finances for the
Right.
general operating budget.
Yeah.
But in regard to special projects, right, that was really the intention, and I believe, Mike, you had mentioned, that's why we have the Facilities Improvement Committee, right? So, I don't know if there's roles and responsibilities or goals of that committee, and how that really differentiates from this financial oversight committee that we're all talking about. So, I don't know where those three intersect, if they intersect, or what the next steps are there, but we can see if there's a document produced by the budget committee and evaluate from there.
Great.
Cool. Thank you for sending out your email today on the confirmation that the fiscal year 22 deficit was cleared. We used the monies from the two reserve accounts plus the 100,000 and change from Bank of America.
Yep.
To cover that.
104, yeah.
Thank you. Perfect. I think the only other thing that I would like to see, and you answered this today, just for the public awareness, is the DOE 25 form. Is that the name of the form?
Yep.
Yep, the DOE 25 form, just to see what was submitted to the state.
So that was sent into the state on Friday, and it's typical for the state to reply back, say, hey, this needs to switch here. So they're looking at it, they haven't replied back that anything needs to switch, but once we have the okay, then what I'll do is I'll definitely share it with the board.
Great.
That also feeds into the MS 25, which then goes to the DRA, which goes into tax setting. So when you fill out the DOE 25, a tab which autofills into your DOE 25 answers, just autofills into that tab. So there's two cover sheets which the board has to sign too. So
Okay.
once I get that back, I'll send out the DOE 25, and you'll see on that, a couple tabs over, is the MS 25. And
Does
then
the budget committee doesn't sign off on that, right? They sign off on
they don't sign off on that.
they sign off on what's approved for the following year, but not that, okay, great.
Yeah.
Correct.
So at our next board meeting, I'll bring the cover sheet. By that time, you should be able to have access to both those. Bring the cover sheet so you guys can sign off on that as well.
Thank you.
And Michelle, I believe that all the former ones are archived on the website, right? So you can look back at past ones, and once this is all done, they'll be archived there also. So it will be accessible to the public through the website.
The DOE 25 is on the website?
Yeah.
I did not even know that.
Yeah.
Under
Okay.
business and operations, I think
I
you'll see
think it is, I can't
location
remember what's
for it.
there, but.
Possibly, or, I mean, I know the audits are on there. That's what we
Yeah.
found the other
Well, I
day.
usually put the reports from every year if I have the DOE 25 at the time. But we use the DOE 25 also to set the, tax rate, the tuition.
Great.
Oh, the tuition.
Yeah.
That brings me to my last point for this section.
Uh-oh.
Well, it's timely because we're talking about website, right? And I know at one point in time, we were talking about a website overhaul. I have no idea where that is in process.
Yes, I would like to know that too.
We are working with the design team at Link, or it used to be called eSchoolView. We have a meeting with them, a Google meeting with them tomorrow morning. We had, Mr. Jamrock and I had taken components from some of their templates and built what we wanted for the pages. But somewhere between what we did and what they sent back to us, there was a little bit of a breakdown. So it wasn't quite what we wanted to see. So we're gonna refine it tomorrow and hope that the finished product out of that meeting will be what we wanna go forward on. And
Are we gonna be able to see it?
I will, if they give us what we want, you should be able to see. I have to add you to that folder. We have a district website folder. You can see all the work we've done.
Okay.
Right.
Actually, I'll just add the whole board to it, so you can see what we've done. And you can see what we came up with as opposed to what they came up with.
Is it simple, easy to use?
Oh, yeah, it will be, and there'll be an app.
Ooh.
The eye of the beholder, right? But
Yeah.
I think that's cool. That's great. What date are we working back from? What's our date to launch?
Launch date.
Depends on when they're, well, okay, so once they have the design, it is, I think, a 6-week turnaround. I hope I'm right. I'll check with Mr. Jamrock to make
So
sure.
maybe
but
like January 1st?
I'm thinking by the end of the year, we should have a launch.
Okay.
Because we have to beta it, so we'll have everybody beta, see what they think. You beta on your phones. because that's the most important part, is how it's presented on the phones, and how interactive it is and intuitive it is. And then once we get that feedback from the beta, we'll, if it needs any fine tuning, we can do that, and then we'll have a launch date. So I'm hoping by the end of the year. We were gonna say October, the end of October, but there's no way it's gonna be ready by then.
It would be nice by the beginning of the year. That'll be awesome.
Well, that's what we're hoping.
Yeah.
That's what we're hoping.
And I believe, Michelle, you and Chris and the committee were working with one, customer service person.
Oh, yeah,
Who
and
then left.
he has moved on, and the person, there's nobody that took his place yet, but the head designer, I've never worked with her before, so her and I need to be on the same page, I think.
So just, that was one, because we were originally on a faster track, but then when the person left, you then get handed to somebody else, and you have to re-explain the goals and objectives and what you're trying to accomplish. So I know Chris and Michelle have both expressed like, okay, we lost time because there was a personnel change
Right.
on their side, so.
Well,
Yeah, I
there's
know we were
also-
originally targeting the beginning of the school year,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So that's why.
Yeah, there's also, the designer, one of the designers that worked with us on the last website is still there, and I asked if he could be included, because he knows what we want. And I would like to work with, have his feedback on it, because he knows, he helped us before, and he's familiar with what we want. So, we have it's a big meeting tomorrow with a lot of different, personnel from that company, so hopefully we'll be on the same page. We'll get what we want, the product we want, and we'll move forward.
I'm done.
Great, thank you. Those were good questions.
Did we wanna?
Mr. Brunel, would you like to speak about Wi-Fi in Litchfield? Is
Thanks
that
for
what you're
coming
gonna
on
talk
down to
about?
town hall.
Yes, self-service.
So I was sitting in my office listening to the conversation, and I think I had Andrew's phone. I texted him and go, "Here's a fill. Here's a." I didn't,
Yeah, sorry, I feel it buzzing, but I didn't look.
So I'll cover a couple things. So with regards to two-way communications first in the schools. So the town had offered up, 2 years ago, we put in a system for our DPW. That's what we call the repeater. It's town-wide. And Mike referenced it and Doug referenced it as, that's how we're gonna allow inter-school communications. The first phase of that was the first purchase of radios that we just did prior to Doug coming on board. I have all those radios. They're almost all programmed. I just gotta get with the principals to get them their radios and start talking about how they can use them. So that's the first phase. So that improves the school communications, and the plan is to grow that system, because all the older radios will get replaced with this newer radio. Again, in school, it's direct communications like it is today. They won't really notice much difference. There'll be a couple of channels that'll be allocated for emergency and or inter-district communications, which means they could be sit up at CHS and talk to somebody down at the SAU or whatever, right? So that's the first phase. And there's the grants that Doug referenced. Were kind of twofold. One, it was to grow the portable radios for the schools, but the second part of it was to, more importantly, improve the public safety communications outside of the school system. So the fire department and police department use a system that's on what they call VHF, right? And those radios don't penetrate buildings very well. So we improved all this communications in the town, and it's been really well covered for the town itself. Matter of fact, outside the town works really well too. But you get into the school, it's like blanket over the head, you can't hear anybody. They'd be looking at each other. So what we're doing, the first grants that we got was what they call a UDA or BDA. And what all that is it takes our outside and brings it inside so that they can hear it using their standard radio. Our original path was we'll give them a special radio, but that doesn't scale well when you have outside communities coming in and stuff like that. So this is a better path. As Doug said, we are going back to Motorola and the companies that are gonna provide that system, getting updated quotes, and hopefully kick it off as soon as they get those quotes, if you're comfortable in moving forward. So that's a priority, and CHS is the biggest problem. We don't have those type of communications problems with police and fire in the other two schools. They're older buildings, different construction. CHS is a much tighter building from a construction perspective. There's a lot more metal involved into it. So that's the two-way stuff for that. With regards to cellular service, obviously the event that we had, the bomb scare that we had a while back, created a lot of stir. The town leverages Verizon Wireless as its primary emergency communications. So when you look at the cruisers and the fire department, all their computers are all integrated in that network. So that's where we're kind of focusing right now. And it is true that almost every carrier has pulled service away from this town. Litchfield is actually serviced by a tower that's across the river over Merrimack. That's where the primary is. The tower that's to the north, that everybody kind of references up by the 9-hole, most of their focus is in Manchester. It used to be focused here, but now it's in Manchester. Everybody has a different opinion about what's really going on. There's also retiring of old systems to new systems, which don't have the same coverage. So for the last 8 months or so, we've been working with Verizon to at least look at the system in town, and they have found several areas of concern, and they have construction projects to try to fix it. Some of it is reporting assets into the town, other is to construct other areas in the town. The town has offered up their sites as microsites. We don't know if they'll take us up on that offer, but that's coming. But more important to the school, they have offered at no cost to put in a cellular in-building repeater. Basically, same thing. It takes a signal outside, brings it inside, so it looks like you're having full coverage. And Verizon initially said there's no cost. We can get it done, and I think we talked about potentially doing it CHS first, the same time we put the public safety system in. And I think our only question for the board and maybe the schools is, how well do you want it to cover? Our areas are really concerned with the administration area and the outside, right? We want to make sure we had better coverage in the parking lots and in the areas of where there are people of authority. I wasn't sure we wanted to cover students. Wi-Fi, if Wi-Fi is restricted, if they have perfect cellular service, they can just bypass it altogether. So it's really going to be up to your discretion how you want to do it. I will proceed to continue working with Verizon to get that on the docket, to get it scheduled. Once we get the Verizon stuff, we're going to start focusing on T-Mobile. It's the next one, and then AT&T. It's a matter of priority. And again, they're happy to make the investments. I don't think they realize how bad at least Verizon's perspective, they didn't realize how bad they had created a problem for us.
So there'd be separate repeaters in the buildings for each?
No, in the in-house systems that I've seen that I've deployed in the past are multi-vendor. It just needs to be able to point to a site to get it what they call it kind of borrows that site and brings it into the building. So we'll look at that, but.
John, you are a plethora of information.
Thank you
You
so
are a
much for
source
coming.
we need to tap more.
And I would only say, Tara, when you ask the governor to do something, these are businesses. They're not obligated to do anything. And,
Right.
And not that the town,
Well,
this town
there's
has.
that last mile legislation that I think is in there is.
Well, that will help, but they also have to find locations to put these infrastructures up, and people don't want them in their backyard either, so.
No.
That's another challenge. But technology is changing, and so you don't see these massive towers. You're starting to see these microsites on telephone poles. But that's a lot of expense to build them out.
And the branches on the towers, that definitely hides them.
No, it doesn't.
Franken
doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't. But like I said, I think Verizon's coverage will improve in town generally over the winter, because I think that's when their projects will start kicking off. I have a check-in call with the engineers, I think in 2 weeks, so I'll know where they're at. I know they have all their build-out requests been made, and they have all their investment analysis done and all that kind of thing. So they say they're gonna do it. I just don't have a firm date on all that too. But the BDAs, or the systems we put into the school, at least helping within the school itself, and that would improve an emergency. That's how I justified it, or got them to even consider doing it for free, or whatever they do. It's because it is an emergency issue, and they don't want me moving off of Verizon. That's the other side of it too.
Thanks
so.
for crashing our meeting.
I
John,
know,
you
that
I would
was
have not
very.
done that justice.
I know.
That was great.
Very helpful.
No one ever
Thank
wants
you.
to listen to me about it, so it's okay.
We are all
I
ears.
like it. Thank you.
As you're,
Thank
making,
you.
as you're making progress, can you keep us up to date?
I can, I will,
Okay.
sure.
All right.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I've delivered some updates in small pockets, but I'm not sure it's being understood totally, so. But I will
That was
keep
helpful.
updating. All right.
Yes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Go back to my
John
office.
on the agenda
Yep.
every quarter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
the rest of the meeting.
Approval of, we're moving on, we're
General business.
general business.
Oh, actually, sorry, I have
Oh.
two things. The first thing is I'd like to express condolences to the Huntoon family and the Hudson community on the loss of Gavin. He was a football player, and a number of Litchfield students knew him and were teammates of his with the Bears. So our thoughts are with you.
Absolutely.
And then my second thing is, would this be a good place to talk about the New Hampshire School Boards Association? There were two continuing resolutions that were passed that were not initially recommended by the board of directors. So I think that that's noteworthy in letting you know what those were. Do you want to know those now?
Yes.
Okay, the first was around food insecurity. That state and federal governments seek and provide viable, sustainable, permanent funding to provide a school breakfast and lunch at no cost to students. Based on improved cognitive functioning, functioning and learning, improved math and reading scores, better attendance, fewer behavior problems, improved executive functioning, memory, and ability to concentrate. So that did pass, although it was not recommended by the School Boards Association, because the School Boards Association felt like they had I think they had like 12 different other resolutions that were related to funding. But there were none specific to food insecurity, so that did end up passing.
Because by eating breakfast, the students will be more cognitive.
Yeah,
I get
exactly. Okay, so
What does that mean by passing?
it means that it is the attorneys that work for the School Boards Association in their advocacy. This becomes one of the things that they advocate for.
All right. So
And then
it's not passed as a state
correct.
law.
No. These resolutions are just what New Hampshire School Boards Association members have voted to be the priorities and the advocating.
So
I
they'll
don't know,
testify
thoughts.
on
Yeah.
behalf of school boards at public hearings.
So the interesting thing is that for it to become I think that was I think the first year it's just a resolution, but then there are a set of them that are their continuing resolutions. So those are the ones that have been voted 3 years in a row that have been affirmed. And so those then become ongoing resolutions that are advocated for, and then aren't necessarily, they don't have that annual, they're not subject to that annual. Well, actually, you do vote, we did vote for all of them, as well. But they don't have that individual scrutiny each year, specifically. So, and then the second one, was it is advocating for legislative action that ensures local school boards comply with federal firearm laws and policies. And so the rationale for that was 311,000 students in 193 primary and secondary schools have experienced a shooting on campus since Columbine High School massacre in 1999. And I believe this came up because there was legislation in New Hampshire, right, that I think it was just this year, that prohibits schools and towns in New Hampshire from enforcing any federal statute, regulation, or presidential executive order that restricts or regulates the right of people to keep and bear arms. And so the New Hampshire School Boards Association initially did not support this, and their rationale was that they, again, have other language in previous continuing resolutions that prioritize collaborative threat assessment and crisis planning with school district and supporting legislation at various levels that protect students and school district employees from on-campus violence. But I think the people who passed it wanted it to have, this more specific language. So I have the resolutions here if anybody wants to read them.
Thank you.
I thought they were both noteworthy, so there you go.
Thank you.
And thank you for going.
Yeah.
It's always a really interesting event. It's
Yeah.
done a lot.
Approval of the public minutes from September 19th, 2022.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from September 19th and September 21st.
Has everyone had a chance to review September 19th? Those were posted yesterday, right? Yeah, okay.
I seconded.
Yeah, one second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained, 500. I'm gonna take a minute. Is there any public comments since we're coming up to the 8 o'clock hour? Public comments? Great. Business and operations, Mr. Taunton.
All right, so the first one on there has to do with the fact that, this got added today. So, but as I look at next week, I finally think I'm gonna get to a point where things are gonna settle down a little bit, from all the work on fiscal year 22.
Yeah.
And then catching up a little bit, so looking forward to that, because I know there's been some emails that I skim, and then they just don't make that to do that day thing, and I usually get back to emails a little bit quicker than I've been able to since I've been here, but next week will be
A
the
whole new
start
ball
of
game,
a,
right?
by the end of next
Yep.
week, the start of a difference. Next thing on there is our August invoice for North Branch, so it's, 1.5 million. There was a lot of work done in August, there was a lot of people in the building in August of different trades, different subcontractors, and a lot got done. So a good month, or how you'd want the month to be, since the kids aren't there for the most part. And so that has been paid by our lease through the Bank of America.
This is August, not July?
That is August, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Next thing is just the financial reports, which next board meeting will be our second of the month, so that's when I'll be reporting those out. So the ones that I have reported out are the expenditures, so most of the reports are coming directly from eFinance. So that'll be detail and summary, and then I pull out the health and dental, I create the table on the bottom for that. Then there was a request for a comparison report, which I think makes a lot of sense this year compared to last year. So again, detail and summary, right from eFinance. When it comes from eFinance, it's quick, it's easy. And then we have Fund 30, which is our capital projects. So as we've seen, as I've been kind of presenting, we've had like the revenue and expenses, which I've created a table for. I think it's a little bit easier to kind of read that way, as well as each invoice that comes in by vendor. I'll do a short description of the work that happened for those invoices too, and those will kind of total up as we go month through this year. We also talked about earlier in this meeting about revenue coming in as well. So we'll get one of those canned reports from eFinance, so that'll be an eFinance report. And then I didn't know if there was any other comments, suggestions. I mean, obviously, this doesn't have to be the only time we get things rolling next time, and if people say, okay, that was good, but we're missing this. But anything right off the bat at all?
I appreciate everything you've done, Doug. I'm sure I speak for the board. Is there anything that you are gonna have trouble providing us that's difficult, or you need extra time on?
No.
Good.
No, not at
And
this point.
after you finished everything up last week, and now you're gonna have a little more free time? to
After
do
next
your
week, I'll have a
job?
little bit more free time.
Excellent.
After next week, that's
Yeah,
when I'm
okay,
kind of,
fair enough.
yeah,
You've
a little
been,
bit more catching up to do next week.
been working double time.
Anybody else?
So the expenditure comparison reports, what are they gonna compare to? Just last year or
Just last year.
Just last year, okay, got it.
Yeah, I thought that was helpful. I think-
Absolutely.
Was that the percentages, is that the same thing, or is that something different?
No, it is, well, it actually have like, the report kind of splits down the middle last year and how much the budget was for, how much was spent, and the percentage of the budget spent at that
Yep.
time. And then the same thing for
Yeah,
this year.
I think that's gonna be super helpful, and that's just a report you can print from eFinance, you don't
Yep.
have to.
That's
I plug in a
fantastic.
couple
Yeah,
things and
that's-
eFinance does the
Good,
rest.
okay.
So,
I
Wow,
think that'll be helpful in giving us a good capture.
And it's
of
real
where
time.
we are.
and
Yeah.
it's real time.
So it will be for period, so each month it'll be for that month before.
Okay, that's
So,
fair. Yeah.
so July is period 1, because that's when we start our fiscal year.
Right.
So that means September would be period 3. So, an August period 2 type of thing, so, yep.
Excellent.
And
So Fund 30, right now, I mean, that captures all the capital projects. So right now, we would have some, I know we're slowing down elementary, but some of those, but also primarily the LMS. Those are the
Mainly-
two.
Yep, LMS, so, yeah, elementary has definitely been slowed down, where some people, they have some invoices from the summer, but they won't be sending any more invoices in until we kind of ramp back up at some point, like Niebling Consulting, done doing work. Barker's pretty much somewhat done, and we did a little bit of looking at the site the other day, but that's pretty much done, so everything with the elementary is, they know where we're at, and they know our expectations is, you know, we're not focusing on the elementary
So when
right
we
now
see
as far as.
that on a monthly basis, will that represent the negative amount that we need to recover this year from the budget?
It will.
Or,
Yeah, because again, our known revenue at this time is the Bank of America loan, and that's it. And again, the Bank of America loan can only go towards phase 2 work for North Branch. Can't go towards anything else.
yep,
You know, and, well, I shouldn't say that it's only revenue. We also use part of ESSER 3 for the July bill for work as well. But yeah, the work this year then is to find,
so the expenses are categorized under the Fund 30 for those, and then once we're reimbursed for Bank of America,
so,
they're offset? Or no?
a little bit more complicated than that.
Okay,
So
sure.
complicated, but complicated and easier than that. So
Okay.
Bank, once we authorize the North Branch contract, then I send a wire transfer request to Bank of America, and they send the money directly to North Branch. So
Okay.
that money never hits
Okay,
us,
got it.
and then goes to North Branch. The only time it came to us
Okay.
was when we got reimbursed for that $104,000 that we already paid towards North Branch, and then they transferred the money to us.
Okay,
Now, it's still gonna show up in our accounting system because we wanna show money coming in, money going out as
Yeah.
well. So at the end of the time, we have a total expense. But that Bank of America money doesn't typically, and won't from this point on, most likely, hit our bank account. It'll just go right to North Branch.
okay, but it'll still show as, you'll see both ends of it in
You'll see-
Fund
we're-
30, right?
Yeah, in Fund 30,
Okay.
you'll see, yeah.
Andrew,
So the August invoice for North Branch for $1,520,793.72 for public awareness. Is that in the manifest to sign this evening?
No, that is not in the manifest, so. I don't think you guys have been signing off on the North Branch. The reason why it's not in the manifest too is because there was, through the warrant, there was an agreement that we were gonna pay North Branch that amount of money. So, and North Branch is working off of the contract that was agreed upon.
So because it's not coming into our books, because it's coming right from the MLP?
Well, because it was you know, the known project that got voted on from the warrant article, and that, you know, we're using a lease to pay that project that was solely going towards North Branch Phase 2 work from a contract.
And I see it different because it's not going, we're getting the invoice, but it's being paid directly by Bank of America from the lease.
right,
We're not writing a check for it and then
Yeah.
getting reimbursed from the MLP.
Yeah.
so it doesn't go through the manifest
It's not going
process.
through
Yeah,
us.
So before, though, it does get signed, Dave Ely, our owner's rep, and that's why this one is a little bit late, because he was sick for a little bit. You know, he's not gonna, he takes his job seriously, so if he's sick, he's not gonna sign off on 1.5 million. So he came back from feeling better, and he looked at it, then I look at it, and we ask any questions that we have. But it does not go into the manifest.
Okay.
But it'll
I
still be
recall-
included for our awareness, right?
Past invoices that we've paid of large dollar amounts have made it into the manifest. I'm trying to understand.
I think the past invoices were ESSER fund reimbursements, so they would have been
Okay.
They were
in the
non-Bank of
manifest as a
America.
result of that.
Right.
However, we can get you the invoice. That's not, if you want the invoice, we'll get you
I
the
think the
invoice.
invoice
That's not a problem.
is attached, right? Isn't
Well,
it?
yeah, it's attached now.
There
It's
you
right
go.
in, the link is right in there.
Oh, in Doug's
Yes.
report.
In Doug's
Got it.
report,
Okay.
yeah. So we have
You
it.
should have it, but it won't be in that pile because of the.
But it's not
invoice
something
being
we
paid.
have to physically sign off on
The
because
bank
it's
took
not
care of it.
flowing
Yep,
through
through
us.
us.
But if you have questions on it, you certainly should ask us those.
Got it.
And again, we have a working relationship with North Branch, so like if you had questions and something came up, I don't think they're gonna be like, well, no, you signed it, you paid it, you're done type of thing. So,
I know we have that not to exceed, but I'd like to understand, I guess, not for tonight, but on some type of regular basis, how we're tracking against the balance outstanding
for North Branch,
for all construction versus what we have for revenue to pay it.
yeah, so that will be part of the report that will come once a month, so will be the revenue and expenses.
In the Fund
for-
30?
For Fund 30.
Yeah.
And then there'll be the sheet which lists every invoice with a little description and what that went
So
towards.
Fund 30 also includes the Bank of America loan.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Doug, if, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I thought the invoices, like, we looked today at paperwork, and it sort of shows the guaranteed maximum agreed upon in the contract, and then how we're paying against that. So, you know, one of the things to track that we're not gonna exceed the guaranteed maximum is, it's on the invoices. They're aware of it, I believe. So that we're always mindful that, okay, we spent this much toward the guaranteed maximum. And our goal is to not spend the guaranteed maximum.
Right.
We may, depending on how the project goes, but, you know, we're not gonna exceed that. And we did, somebody asked a question, I thought we answered it, but I'm gonna answer it again tonight, cause it's an important one, which is, how do we know that we're not gonna get bills beyond the guaranteed maximum? And North Branch has said, cause that's the guaranteed maximum, and they said, we own that. We have to work within that guaranteed maximum. You're not gonna get bills beyond it. Because the scope of the work is the same. Even though we're gonna demobilize and pull out for a little bit, you're not gonna be incurring expense when we do that. And when we remobilize, you're not incurring expense for that because it all has to be delivered under the guaranteed maximum.
So next meeting too, though, there are change orders that happen when, you know, you have a multi-million-dollar construction. So and it's purposefully where you make decisions to have the guaranteed maximum go up. And so we'll present some of those that have happened. Give you one example, you know, when we were walking around the building, we noticed that the railings, the paint had deteriorated, and, you know, these are supposed to be safety railings type of thing, and if people don't feel like they're gonna put their hands on a safety railing, then they don't do their purpose. So they bid it out. It was like, I don't know, it was like $1,400 to do that. So we had their subcontractor paint the railings. So, you know, there's been other things that have been bid out that were like, nope, we're not going that direction. So we'll go over those, have been kind of more finalized. We'll be able to have a chance to go over some of those next time as well.
And we have other change requests that we have parked to see where we are contingency and budget-wise, but they're things that, yes, we need to replace that carpet, but not yet. So those things are also kind of in the pipeline, and we just had a meeting today about those types of items, so.
And some of the change orders have gone in our favor too. So we talked about TEG tabs way back in the summer. That was like a $10,000 thing. And then there was also lights that were supposed to go right in front of like every whiteboard also, but the light in the room itself was already much more, very sufficient. So we took that out as well. So that came a little bit of a credit. At that point though, we have, the lights were already on, you know, on site type of thing. So, but we have the opportunity to use the lights someplace else, or we talked about today, you know, how can we go about possibly selling them to somebody else? So not all change orders are adding. There have been some change orders that have decreased.
Cool. All right. The capital improvement, or the fund balances in general, right? Will those be included in your updated reports on what those balances are? So I believe like capital improvement fund balance should have $125,000 balance in it after our voting actions.
So you want the trust fund
Oh, those are
balance?
the trust
balance.
funds and the
Yeah.
reserve funds.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, I can get that to you. I mean, typically the good news about that is that they don't change too much. Like last year, I think, you know, before we made changes, there was the addition to the capital projects one, and then there was paying for Barker for $132,000, and then interest in each one of like $30-40 type of thing.
Yeah, I think just the current state, given the actions, so we can see what the numbers are in those accounts.
I think we're gonna try to provide you those, because it's really only a couple of accounts, and then if we can track the impact fee money also, so that we can keep up to date on where those stand.
I think we could get that monthly, once a month.
No,
Yeah.
like Doug said, they don't change very much.
Yeah.
My main concern was after our actions, where do we stand as of today? Just to get
And
that summary.
here's something the board needs to hear. You met Monday night and in the auditorium, and you took action, right? Tuesday morning, the trustee came in with a checkbook and wrote a check for $619,000 to the school district, right? Handwritten check, handed it to Ann, and Ann had it deposited. Okay, that's what happened. So Monday night you took the action, the gentleman came in Tuesday and hand wrote a check for a phenomenal amount of money, and it was deposited. And then he came back, because he had missed in the email that we actually asked for 2 checks. He came back later and wrote the second check handwritten. So the system works and the money's in the bank. And I just think it's important that you understand how that cash flow actually occurs, because the trustee's in charge of it. But he came in and turned that money right over. It wasn't, let's wait 2 weeks to have this happen. It was next day.
And we also got the wire transfer from Bank of America, so that's in our account as well. So fiscal year 22 is the verge of being closed out. The tricky thing is, as we talked about the capital project fund, and we talked about our expenses exceeded our revenue. At the end of the day, though, we put into that, because that was the case, that $4.95 million lease, municipal lease. So, you know, the DOE 25 and the MS 25, you know, everything's gonna show, you know, we weren't anywhere close to zero for the capital projects. But again, that's restricted money. That's why when we talked at the public meeting, you know, to town of Litchfield, we said, well, we did exceed, which we did, but now they're gonna see, well, no, well, it's showing 4.8 million or whatever is gonna end up being in there. But that's only because that's restricted money to North Branch Phase 2.
Thank you.
I think we were gonna have a conversation tonight about the request for breakouts by project. Did you wanna do that now or later, or?
Does anyone have any comments, concerns?
Do you wanna see the reporting from Doug that he's putting together to see if that, I mean, it's just, like, it's mostly the LMS and then the.
So, as we look
Some
at
GMS?
Fund 30 from last year, every single invoice that got paid is exactly in their dollar amount. Like, nothing's hiding from that. But if you take it a step back as far as like, what is this invoice attached to? Is it attached to a district expense, LMS expense, or high school expense, or middle school expense? That gets a little bit interesting. So like for me to do this, like the simple way would be to allow e-finance to do it. But if e-finance does it, you're like, well, that doesn't seem like it should go there. That should probably go more towards LMS. So the only way to truly do that would be kind of hand by hand through each invoice and separating it out. And then sometimes even making a judgment call on an invoice as far as, okay, 60% should probably go to the elementary school and 40% might have been an expense from the middle school. So,
The invoices cover that, though? It sounds time consuming to me.
It does.
well, it would be time consuming.
Yeah.
So,
And we value your time, Don.
so if we wanted to do that, I would say we would want to wait till after this first initial budget season, because that's where my focus is mainly going to be on for the next, because my goal is still to get the reports to the school board and the budget committee, you know, several days in advance of when we meet, so.
I would agree that that's a priority.
So to defend Doug a little bit, that's a lot of going back and recreating, touching something for a second or third or fourth time. And right now, we've had our first round of budget meetings with directors, and we've met with 2 schools. I think the 3rd school's tomorrow. So we're heavy into developing FY '24. And, you know, we have until November 1st, the end of October, we have to deliver to the board and the budget committee the paper copies of the budget. And so I really want to defend Doug's time to say, let's get this right. But on the flip side, if there are lingering questions we can answer, we want to be able to answer those. But to go back and recreate all of that may take us away from paying attention to the next need, which is the development of the budget.
I personally think the budget should be the number 1 priority at this time. I don't know how anyone else feels.
I agree with Tara. I think let's see how the report looks, because it's the second meeting, so it'll be the next meeting that we'll get a report out. Let's see what's on there. Let's see what we're able to see and what might still be missing, and then I think we can sort of assess. I don't want to make you do more work. I mean, could be covered elsewhere. And again, the judgment call part sounds like it, you know, 40 or 60%, you know, it could vary. Yeah, so I would lean towards, let's see what the next meeting's reports look like. We're gonna focus, I think, on FY '24 for certain, but I also think we need to be keeping a close eye on FY '23 right now, because we do have that projected potential deficit for the rest of the year, if nothing changes. And so I think we're kind of have a lot of balls in the air at the moment, but I think the information you're planning to provide us should cover, I think, what we're gonna need at this point.
For this point, as far as looking back though, I wouldn't be able to say this is how much in total LMS Phase 1 cost between North Branch and say Windy Hill and these other
Right.
things.
I'm just going off what the voters had asked for, and I think, I don't wanna speak on behalf of the budget committee, right, but I think what the budget committee will also ask for, right, is some type of reconciliation back to the individual projects, and then ensuring that it actually ties back to what was voted or approved from a cost perspective. Now, we heard earlier tonight that the projects are really under the purview of the facilities committee, right? We talked about that, so sensitive to your schedule, 100%, and you need to be focused on the budget, 100%. Is this an activity that we can delegate out to the committee?
Doug is on the facilities committee.
But there's others a part of that committee, right? So, I don't know.
Yeah, but in terms of the financial aspect of it, I mean, I think that would truly mostly come.
But it-
Doug's giving those updates to the facilities committee the same way he's giving those updates to us.
Point being, is it something that can be delegated? If so, who? It goes back to the need, do we need to look at a separate oversight committee? It's all, because while I understand your time, certainly now, I don't think this request will go away. In my 2 cents.
I see your point. I don't necessarily disagree with your point either, because I do think there's a lot of questions still. I think despite the view of some that we're trying to say, okay, we've moved on, let's move forward, and we're just putting it in the past, I think every board member here, if I can speak for you, is still acutely aware of what happened, is still very much looking for ways, and probably you as well, to make sure it doesn't happen again. And so in terms of reporting, I think that was some of the biggest changes we're making, is making sure that we're seeing and understanding and asking questions. And so from that perspective, I would say let's try out September report, see where we're at. There may be a request to go back, and I think we have to look at that.
So,
Well, there
I just
already
have a
was a request.
question.
I, as a board member, requested it, right? So, and
So-
I suspect you'll hear it from others.
Going forward, how difficult is it, like, as each new project starts, to create that separate, is it a sub-account, or?
Talking about like a different fund instead of calling just Fund
Yeah,
30, call it
like
like a Fund 30 and a Fund
different
35.
funds, exactly.
I think that's.
Cause
what I-
then reporting
Right.
would be generated automatically from that.
But at the same time, I don't know that we can necessarily go back and start from the beginning of the
Mid-project,
project.
Yeah,
right.
we
And
wouldn't be able to.
refund and reallocate everything from the beginning of the project. I think we are where we are now, and we have, we've made changes to how we do it, and, I don't know that going back and trying to reallocate those all from the same fund, or budget them in a different way, or reaccount for them in a different way is helpful.
So we wouldn't be able to go back and create different funds, because the funds go
Right.
into the DOE 25 as well. I mean, it's not, we could do multiple funds for capital projects. Talking with the auditors, some people do that, some people run it all through one. So either one works.
All right, well, let's see the
I
reports.
think it's good to
and
know
we'll go
that
from there.
that's an option going forward.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, so just, we've had just the Fund 30, and that was we've kept that and used it for different projects throughout the years, I'm assuming. So like if we have, an maybe it's one for each school that we create, I don't know.
Yeah, Fund 30 has been used for different things, like when you move to full day K, it was used to track that expense, which, is a good way to kind of track what that expense actually looked like in that year. And then, then it moved more towards the Canby project, other LMS projects than elementary project.
And those are all closed out within a year, is that right? Or within a year or two? So they were shorter term projects?
They were shorter term.
I think the thing, to me, that's the biggest lesson out of this, that we got out over our skis when we went to multi-year, longer projects. And now you were crossing the bridge between fiscal years, and here we are. Every other time, it was like, we're buying portables for the kindergarten, we're buying furniture for the kindergarten.
Yep.
You did it, it was tight.
Right.
You're talking a really tight timeline, and it was closed out. The canopy, well, even the secure entrance at Griffin was added, but that was a tight project.
Yeah.
The canopy, a little bit longer, but it was still done by, it was sort of when we start that, like September to December. So it occurred within one fiscal year. it's when LMS became a multi-year project, at the same time that Griffin was emerging as a multi-year
Right.
project.
Right.
That's what got us into,
I think it's the multi-year and the multi-school. I think that
And the carrying over.
Yeah.
it was,
Yeah, 'cause it's-
too intertwined to be able to
And
track.
having the same consultants work on both and, you know, dividing their time between both projects. I mean, there were a lot of things that, you know, got conflated.
yeah, I mean,
Oh, okay.
Dave Ely's an excellent architect, and he's a natural to be an owner's rep because he understands it, and we have a good relationship with Dave, and I've watched the guy work, nothing gets by him. So I think you take all that, and you're right, all of a sudden, now he's got a hand in the Griffin also project, so I just think there was a lot of that multi-touch that didn't help us.
Andrew, quick question. For the budget committee, did you just copy the link that Doug has here and send that over to them after each of the meetings? I don't remember.
I had actually PDF'd it. Or
You
just-
PDF'd
just
it, cause that
downloaded
was
it,
gonna
so-
be my other question, if they would have access to the documents, so PDF it. And then if it has a link to another document, are they gonna be able to see that,
I
this
was
August invoice?
downloading those too.
You were you're downloading all of them, okay, got it, okay.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
in fairness, right, I only
Yeah.
had 2-3 budget committee meetings, so
Yeah.
it wasn't.
Okay. All right.
The only other thing to mention under business operations is you had mentioned the preparation for the November 1st and November 3rd budget review sessions, and hard copies being available. I'd also like to request the standard Excel file that I've requested for years also be made available so I can look at it.
So historically, we've provided that after the board adopted. It was an Excel file of the board's approved budget. So it's kind of up to the board because you're gonna make changes. We're gonna present and you're gonna make changes. So it's which electronic copy do you want to be handed over? And our feeling in the office, Corey and I had talked about making sure that it was the board's final version and then let the budget committee do its work from there. But if you give the electronic version of the not yet approved budget, then somebody has to track those changes, and we wanted to make sure that it was the BA tracking all of that and then presenting, here's the board's copy. So, you know, I mean, technically, you're looking at, your second session is on November 3rd. I don't think the budget committee sees it until November 17th, if I have that date in my head, I don't know why.
I don't remember the calendar.
Yeah, I think that's right. So you really, I mean, there's plenty of time for you to approve it on the 3rd, have us do our magic, and then get it in front of the budget committee on the,
Is it the 10th?
it says the 10th. It is in yellow. Maybe it is that date.
My only concern with that is, given my look on the school budget for a number of years, I won't be able to ask any questions or analyze the budget at all and be ready. So if you're trying to restrict that, then we can continue with the hard binders. And then I'll have to ask questions afterwards.
What do you mean restrict that? Can you clarify?
The binders, while they're helpful for a page by page, they're not helpful for holistic, cross-department, cross-function review, which is where I've always found the value in analyzing the school budgets. By having a soft copy, I can look at all code 272s, all code 430s, whatever the codes are, right? I can't do that page by page. I need a soft copy to be able to do that analysis.
So what, because the board's not necessarily aware of what Andrew's done, so correct me if I'm wrong, but you've taken the electronic and with pivot tables have done comparisons to say, here's the way it all works. You're linking together every single conference line to say where are all the conference lines throughout these hundreds of pages, and then you're saying what's the general trend happening in conferences, for example. So it's a higher level analysis by the use of the pivot tables on it, versus how much is Mary asking for in conferences, how much is
Which is
Doug
also
asking for?
helpful, right? It's also helpful. It's just what I call a bottoms up and a tops down, right? Bottoms up, we're going through page by page, looking at each request, understanding it, great. Well, tops down is now saying, all right, I have 100 code 272s across my 160-page budget. How am I looking at just from a code 272 perspective? How am I looking at, from a conferences perspective? How am I looking at from a travel or whatever the codes are, right? I can't do that from a soft copy. It's not possible. Or from a hard copy, excuse me.
So
How does that work with Doug, with your reporting?
what I have thought and what Corey and I have talked about is the need to understand kind of how do I phrase this? The human nature of running a school, which is looking at it and saying, GMS needs this, Dan is asking for that.
That's
right?
how I find
That there's-
yeah.
That there's that we have felt needs to occur first, and then a deeper dive into, okay, so now, as we've heard all those human requests, how do we do a deeper dive into it from a kind of a more statistical analysis?
That's fine, but I will not be ready with questions, right, until certainly the budget committee gets a shot at it. So the idea is that the school board is asking questions on November 1st and 3rd, I won't have any. And you'll have to wait for my questions.
Well,
That's-
we would approve it at the end of the third, the
I
school
can't,
board.
and I won't be able to approve it because I haven't done my analysis.
When are we getting our copies?
So the goal is to have them out by October 27th, which is
26th, 27th, yeah.
a Thursday. It's like 1 week prior. No, it's actually the Thursday, and then you would be meeting on Tuesday for your first session.
You couldn't prepare questions on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
He's
The
saying he
week
can't
before.
prepare it without an electronic copy
Oh,
versus
the paper copy?
a paper
I
copy.
prefer a paper copy.
I prefer both, right? I'm not saying I don't want the hard binder, I do, right? And the budget committee is certainly gonna want that too, but there's also value in asking questions in those sessions before I approve it.
We're not
Before
gonna have an
you approve
electronic copy of the hard copy?
No, he's talking about an
Talking about an Excel sheet.
So,
Oh,
What is the process? to
Which
get
is an
that?
electronic copy of the hard copy.
right, but I'm just saying,
It's the same thing.
but it's a different
Electronic could be
format.
PDF though, too.
It's a different
What is
format.
the process? I guess what I'm asking, is that a huge ask on Doug to provide?
All I'm
it?
asking for is one export in Excel, which you have right there.
No, yeah, I can run it as a PDF, I can run it as an Excel, so.
It's not, I don't think it's a time-consuming ask by any means. I think it's a matter of getting it in advance.
The concern we had in the past is that it shifts the conversation, right? From, we're in a human-driven business, that's what we do,
I think that
and
conversation
providing
is
those
shifting it
services.
regardless.
And-
So, I think Andrew, as a board member, I think he has every right to request it, a format that he can dive into and delve. I mean, ultimately, it's still the decisions, there are 5 members of the board. If, we feel differently on reductions or increases, then that'll play out in our meeting.
Well, I think the other piece too, and
Right.
again, if the board wants this, we can provide it, but, the ask before had been from the budget committee to provide it electronically, and that's a different ask than it is for a board member
Right.
to ask
That's-
for it.
That's kind of why
And,
I'm
but I'm
saying,
also gonna say that there's an obligation among the board for all 5 board members to understand and comprehend the analysis. So
Absolutely, and I'm glad to take
when
that
Andrew
away.
does it,
Yes.
when I'm sitting here saying, I understand the pivot tables, cause we've had the conversation.
right,
He
Right.
needs to teach all of us what he's done and how that's worked and what questions that raises, et cetera. I think there's an obligation to take it to the next level then if, it can't just be one person has this analysis comprehension, right? So, so it's a push of a button. I don't think it's
Push of a
that
button.
complicated.
I personally think,
But it's a game changer in the way the board has looked at it,
it is,
so.
it is.
personally, I would appreciate that. I really would.
Yeah.
I think we all deserve to look at it the way we want. Or if you're more comfortable doing it that way, I think he should have whatever he wants, and we all should get it then, and
I
can.
agree,
We
but
should.
I think it should be the board members who get it. I don't
Right.
think it's a public
Right.
Publicly
Until we
I don't think
share.
it's until the board votes on the budget, it shouldn't be sent.
Right.
Right, and it
Right.
shouldn't be, I agree with that, right? That's fine.
So the
We have
five
a
of
meeting
us
on
have it.
November second.
Right.
Right.
Is that an opportunity for us to go through that type of session?
We could put that on the agenda, but we will not have fully presented yet. You're only gonna hear half the
Right.
budgets on Tuesday and the other half on Thursday. I would suggest that it might be more appropriate to go through the process the way we've done it with the questions. You'll draw them from wherever you're drawing them. But then at the end of the third, before the voting, to say, here's some conclusions I've seen and how I reach those. So sharing, showing on a display board, this is the analysis I've done. Here's the way the pivot tables pull this out. Here are some things that are up drastically or down drastically or whatever. So you're sort of educating everybody, and then we go into the
Yeah.
board.
I think we all bring our different perspectives
Correct.
to those
Yeah.
discussions. I know when we've gone through the budget, even if we do it the same way, somebody else brings some different perspective and different foresight to each line item. So I think a top-down analysis would be beneficial for all of us to hear and consider.
I guess technically you could do half of it on Tuesday night, like we've heard from these departments. I don't know the schedule yet, but,
Yeah.
we've heard from these departments, and the analysis shows the following happening.
That actually
right?
might be good to have those people in the room
Right.
while that's happening too.
Is there a reason we're starting at 6:30?
It was for public participation.
Oh, we're not gonna be done by 8:30, I wouldn't think. I was just curious why we were starting at
Oh,
six.
plus,
Last year, we were
Really?
done by about, I think, one night was 8:45, and the next night was 8:30.
Okay,
I mean, we used to do 6 hours on a Saturday.
I remember.
And now we're doing the
I
2-3
remember.
hours, and it actually has been pretty
Yeah.
efficient, so.
And the budget committee was with us, which
And
I
with the budget
appreciated.
committee
Yeah.
the board operating in the round, if you would, with
Mm-hmm.
the budget committee, and, cause remember, at the end, you also open it up to conversation, or questions from the budget committee. Just like, Tara, thank you for setting up the spreadsheet and tracking the questions.
That was
We
excellent.
did that last year with the budget committee, it was huge in terms of helping that dialogue, so I would expect we'll do the same thing again. The whole point is not to have the principals re-presenting what they
Right.
already presented, like,
Agreed.
let's get it over with, let's be efficient with our time, so.
nope, that's worked out pretty well for the most part. So I think if the third is the idea where we can walk through that analysis, I'll display it, bring it up on screen, whoever public wants to listen in, so be it. I'll need, when can I have the Excel copy, right? Cause that's the key. I'm gonna need time to put it together. Doesn't happen in an hour.
So
The 27th.
our goal is the
27th.
27th, does
Okay.
that give you the
Yeah.
time?
Yeah.
When we turn over the paper,
Yeah, we'll turn over the Excel.
yeah, so
And
we'll
you'll
do,
more just focus on, it sounds like
Thursday
you're
4.
more focused on the Excel.
Yeah.
And the second day, kind of the first day, people
Right,
are
so
gonna be
that can be
tough.
about a week. Perfect.
we remember, one of the learnings from the first time we did this is that we had said, we posted it on the website and said the budget committee access it on your devices, and then we hit Wi-Fi issues.
Right.
Yeah.
Imagine that. So the lesson was, we're gonna hand them paper copies.
Yeah.
So,
Did we get a list of who wanted paper and who wanted electronic?
All the budget committee
Everybody's
wants
getting
paper.
yeah, everybody's
Even the
getting paper. You're
secretary,
getting
yeah.
paper. I'm getting paper.
Alright.
This is just one of
Which
those.
means actually, they're gonna want both.
We have to write on it, we have
Yeah,
to
I
mark
do.
on
Right,
it, and
absolutely.
so it's, it's old school, I'm afraid.
But the
Andrea,
budget committee
Andrea,
will
I'd like to
have
offer-
electronic,
okay.
sorry, the budget committee will have it in an electronic version after the board has approved its version, and they will get it to be able to do
After the third, if we're
Whatever
voting
their-
it that evening,
Yeah.
right?
analysis is. If
So-
they wanna do an electronic analysis,
Well-
they're free to do that after the third.
Once Doug does the cleanup
Yep.
on it, so probably the 4th, then it'll be available again electronically. And then remember, you're getting the superintendent's budget, so we've already met and have said no to things, and we've said, wait a minute, you didn't put enough in here to
Yeah.
things, so we're doing that piece to get what we feel comfortable with.
To present to us.
That's the superintendent's budget presented to you, then it becomes the board's budget to present to the budget committee.
it.
And so, they'll get the electronic version of your budget when you're done.
Great. You all set with that, Andrew?
That works great. 10/27, and I'll plan to present on November 3rd.
Doug?
Not that
Just
you
let's-
need
yeah,
any help, Andrew,
let's-
but if I can help I know how to do pivot tables, probably not I'm sure not to the extent that you do, but I would,
Thank you. It's
Be
just, as you
happy
can
to
see,
take
that
a look.
format's not the easiest to work with.
Oh, from,
Yeah,
this is
that-
what it would be.
I know,
Yeah.
that's what I'm used to receiving.
Yeah.
That's why it takes me forever to get it done.
I could see that, yeah.
Excellent.
I just had to Google pivot table just so I knew
well,
exactly.
they're
what it
the
was.
greatest
Flashback.
tool.
Upskilling tonight, people.
Greatest tool.
Doug,
So in our initial budget meeting so far, I mean, everyone is aware of where the school district is. And their budgets are showing that as well. And I think also there is not an increase in enrollment, that increases in enrollment make tough decisions as far as who you're gonna hire, how many type of thing. And there's a decrease, but looking at the numbers, it doesn't seem to be like a big decrease in order to take off like a lot of positions too. So as of now, the budget's gonna be, there's not a lot of movement, in the budget.
Good.
So,
Anything else, Doug?
but we're still trying to make sure that we get what the students need as well.
Of course,
Also.
always.
So, yeah. So to end my report, I have a audit report or independent report. So before I talk about that, so, not last Friday, but the Friday before, I got an email from our auditor saying, hey, can I connect with you on Monday? I'm like, So, I'm like, sure, call me Monday morning. Like, I'll call you Monday afternoon, that's when I'm available. So they let me know that they had made a mistake and they didn't classify something as an expense. So we're Monday of last week, DOE 25 is due on that Friday. It was a $16,000 expense, which came from teacher retirement type of thing. So they said, we have a couple options. We can take care of this in the next fiscal year, or we can go to look to take care of it this fiscal year. It really left me one option, because to take care of it this fiscal year, remember, we transferred all the money over to the capital projects fund, so I would have had to transfer over 16,500 less, which would have been doable because we just would have taken out 16,500 more from a reserve fund. But we didn't have time to do any of that. So given that the two options, which in my opinion really came down to one option, and this isn't, I mean, they're looking over lines and lines and lines. So I don't think we're the only place that this happens to. We decided to take care, with the auditors, to take care of it next year. So the expense will more show up next year, because at the end of the day, we want our expenses to match up with what the auditors have as well,
Next year, as in this current year.
as in this current year.
That means our deficit's going up by 16,000.
That would be correct. Yeah. Yep.
We kicked the
Okay.
can, but it was, given the timing,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
can had to be kicked.
And it was all legal because that's within the,
That was within there. She checked with the managing partner, and he said, well, this is within our range
Okay.
that we're comfortable with.
perfect.
So she had double checked herself, and, yep, and so without really an option, we chose option one, so.
So it's
So
not,
how
an-
does
it's
something
not,
like
an-
that happen? Is it like data entry, something is recorded as a plus and not a minus, or what?
Yeah, I mean, it's just I mean, if you see our audit, it's like lines and lines and lines and lines, so it's just
Okay.
a lot of stuff that goes into a school budget. I mean, our budget itself is over 100 pages, but then you put each thing in a line too, so it's a lot of data entry, that's done, and, I mean, they do a really good job. I mean, one mistake is not a ton of the whole thing, and, 16,500 is a lot, but over, the whole budget, it's a smaller type of mistake that will still has been expensed, and then we'll more report it next year. All right.
That's a fun update.
Yeah, so last time we left with the idea of looking into, does it make sense to see what the audit company is gonna give us for findings, or do we need an independent report as well? So there's only so much an audit company would do, because it's their scope of work. They're not into the researching what exactly happened on what day with what person and all that stuff. But they gave us a glimpse of the three major findings that will be reported to the board once, they have crossed their Ts as well. So kind of to give these three major findings in a glimpse, the first one is that the unanticipated revenue. So whenever you have unanticipated revenue, you have to accept it, you know, and then before you expense it in a way too. So that would have been part of the ESSER as well as the holiday credit as well. So that is going to be a finding on their part. When I say finding, these three are all negative findings. So the second one is, as they refer to it as a deficit balance in the capital project fund that needed significant transfers at the end of the year. So none of these findings are gonna shock anybody. We've all lived it, we've all talked about it, but they're gonna have a finding on that as well. And then the third one is cash management procedures that ensure that the district has adequate cash to cover all expenses. So again, nothing that's gonna shock anybody. Those last two are the ones that we asked them to look into. So that will be part of the report too, like, hey, we didn't find these, we were asked to look into these two, from the start of the audit. So, that's where their report wouldn't go into much more detail than that. And then as I started thinking about if we wanted an independent, report, because as I was talking with our auditor about the possibility with their report, you know, she obviously started asking me some good questions. So I'm like, well, I don't think I'm ready to really ask people out there like, hey, do you want to do an independent report for Litchfield? Because there's questions that I think would need to be answered by the board before that. So I've listed some questions, and I'm sure the board can think of other ones too, but just to give you an example of some of the questions I've listed are, you know, if I was a person doing this report, I would want to know, you know, what is the overall goal of the independent report? What questions are you looking for the person to answer? How far back in years, months will the person be looking into? Are they interviewing current employees, and who would that be? Is it focused solely on Fund 30? And how much is the compensation are you willing to go up to as well? Because the further they go back, or the more they're asked to do, obviously, the more they're going to be charging the district. So.
Could it be that we hire an audit company to do the analysis that we talked about earlier tonight with the breakout of costs by project?
Yeah, I mean,
How much would that cost? Would they do something like that? Could we get an audit company to do
Sure,
that?
they'll do anything if you
Yeah.
pay them.
they'll do something more like that than kind of, I mean, audit companies aren't going to come in and interview people type of thing, but they would, as far as like the root analysis of everything, but they would figure out where the costs were associated with and attach them to a project.
So my goal in requesting an independent report is, to try to, I want it from a third party, exactly what happened. You know, what is the actual root cause of this? Not what we say it is, not what other committees seem to think it is, so that we actually understand exactly what happened, so it's known to the public, it's out there, and then we are able to then say, we agree, this was the source of the problem, okay? And now, are the actions that we're taking, is the oversight that's happening addressing that? So that, I don't know how we get there, but that's.
And I think an answer from the auditors might be, that's kind of bullet 2 and 3, where, you know, the deficit balance in the capital project fund that needed the significant transfers would be a root cause.
Yeah.
And the cash management would have been a root cause.
That's not a root cause, that's the solution to the problem, right? The root cause is why did it happen in the first place, which we all have speculations about why. We all think we know why. In fact, we heard tonight, well, cross years, cross buildings, right? Maybe that's part of it, but we don't actually physically know that.
Well, I think the second one, which talks about the deficit, I mean, a deficit occurs when you spend more than you have. So, I mean, I think that is the root cause of the problem. You know, that was more money that was spent than there was revenue for. So.
Yes.
I think they could outline the conditions at which that type of problem might happen in the future, you know, like the conditions we've identified so far is that that one fund for two accounts and that they crossed over year to year, you know, what are the other flags that we need to pay attention to? You know,
I think it's important closure not only for the board but for the public.
I agree.
But that does come at a cost, and we need to
Yeah.
understand what that potential is.
So the last time we talked about it was, I believe, the Wednesday board meeting, which came after the Monday meeting. You know, we were all tired. Well, I think any of us will say that.
Yeah.
So, so I think maybe the best way forward is, you know, I don't think deciding that right now. I think everyone having a chance to kind of think about what their goals would be, and then maybe getting that on a page and maybe talking about it next meeting too as well.
Can you send us those questions
I can-
that you
yeah.
have?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fair. I don't know what anyone, how everyone
I
else
think
feels.
that's the best starting point
Yep.
for us, is for us all to answer those questions and then see where we overlap, see if there's anything different.
There needs to
We
be
have to
closure.
define, we have to define the scope, right? I mean,
Yeah.
essentially
Yep.
what you're asking us to do is define the scope, and we may each have individual ideas of what the scope should be, but we need to agree as a group what the scope should be, so I would say let's take the time to answer those questions. Those are pretty detailed, specific questions, and then maybe we will be in a better position if we can put that on the agenda for next meeting, Michelle,
Is that,
to
will that
answer the
take away
scope.
from his budgeting? You
Well,
just
I-
got a
He's
couple of
just
questions,
he's
yeah.
just
I'm just
sending us
sending it,
the
yeah.
Okay, good.
questions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're not asking
And
him
definitely
to-
add more questions too, because, you know, I'm not the only one who's thought about it. You guys have thought about this as well. So add more questions than everyone else can answer. So,
Thank you, Doug.
Yep.
So I think this is related. The budget committee questions, did you wanna cover any of those before I send the responses back to the budget
So-
committee?
Can we wait till we talk about the budget committee and finish?
Yep.
Oh, do you wanna talk it up, during
Yeah,
the
'cause
committee?
I want
Sure.
Doug to finish
Yep.
up.
Okay,
so
got
that's
it.
actually the end for me.
Okay, excellent.
Okay.
I would like to say, Doug, thank you for putting the accounts names in the items for the budget transfers.
Yes.
It makes it.
Oh, I think that's either Michelle who's
Is that
doing
Michelle?
that.
Thank you.
So thank you, Michelle.
I love that. It makes so
You don't
much
miss
more
what you don't know.
right? It makes so much
Yeah.
more
It's
sense.
It's not hard, it doesn't take long.
I
'cause
really,
know
I
them
do
all off the
appreciate that.
top
I
of
know
my
it takes
head.
some time, but I do appreciate that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, reports.
No, actually.
We need to approve the budget.
Oh, sorry.
All right,
I'm just trying to move. I'm getting tired.
I'll make a motion to approve the budget transfers that are listed on the attached document.
All those in favor?
Hold on.
Oh, sorry. I was just looking at them.
Now it's making me log in again.
Must be that corner of the room. Get Brunel back in here.
All right.
Sorry, keep moving.
No, you're good. Not in here, though. Is it good?
So it's not, it's 72, I checked.
I had to take the fleece off it.
I just thought it was just me.
Boiling.
No, I thought it's 72, I checked.
Here I'm still in a jacket.
You're freezing? Oh my God. Oof.
Budget transfers, there we go.
Wanna crack that window?
I think it's probably just as hot. It's 57 out. It's not that great out. More humid. Boring.
Is it really?
It was.
Did you hear it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
That
that was
was
rain.
rain?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Come on.
My fidget tool.
Dalton mowing, that was the question I had.
Is that a yearly, how
Yeah.
long does that
Do we-
cover?
I
For the
thought our
Dalton
staff
mowing.
covered the mowing at GMS, is that not correct?
No.
Not this past year.
Thank you.
So, I don't think, have they typically hired like students at all, like older students at all? So this past year, they didn't do it, I think, because of the time it takes, so they hired.
We were short.
We
were short.
we need to, give us an opportunity to talk with Dave, because Doug is actually working with Dave on budget development. So if you remember a couple of things, we had the part-timer and then we had the summer person who came on to mow. And you couldn't fill these slots, so we made the second position full-time to get it filled and gave up the summer position. And so we just really kind of need to examine where our needs are and what's happening. The other piece is I want to make sure, I know it says Dalton mowing, but Eddie does a lot of work for us. He plows, he helped to move during the process.
Oh, so what does
Our
this bill
groundspeople have
include?
been pulled to go in and do custodial work because we've been shorthanded there. So I think this is sort of a consequence of shorthandedness across the maintenance department. But let us pull that and answer the question as to why, but also what exactly do we need for staff? But, I mean, mowing those fields
They've never looked better.
they look
They
great.
GMS has never looked better. They do the edging and the baseball field and everything. So do we want to hold off on approving the budget till we get our answers, Andrew?
I'm cool with approving all but Dalton mowing.
Okay.
I don't know if you just wanna wait or it's,
We can get you that answer at the next board meeting.
Okay.
If you want.
So I will, Tina, you're my second, right? I'll amend my motion to approve all of the budget transfers except for the Dalton mowing.
I'll amend my second.
Any other questions? All in favor?
I,
Opposed, abstained, 500.
it would be helpful if we're contracting out for mowing. Is that true across all three schools or just GMS?
Just GMS.
Okay. Do we have a way to look at just the mowing costs to GMS? I know it's GMS Ground Services and that's a generic account, but is there a way to get just the
So
mowing
my
aspect?
understanding is each week it's $1,260.
Okay.
So for mowing and weed whacking.
And that's really from what, April through October? Something like that?
Something like that.
Yeah, depending on the season. And remember, it's so wet down there that it grows faster and longer maybe.
And we have to keep the fields up at the high school mowed down to a certain length to have games and things
Yeah.
like that, so that's part of the,
Plain.
sounds like a furnace or something. All right, reports,
Thank you.
committee reports, we all set?
Yep.
Budget committee, Tara Hirschberger.
All right, so budget committee is meeting weekly now as of 2 weeks ago. I'd like to thank you for the budget committee for welcoming me to your meetings, and I've asked a lot of questions to the chair and also to Mr. Leary for the town, so I appreciate, all the answers that they're giving me and, just the information that I've been given to try to catch up, so thank you. First night we went through 14 line item department budgets, 9 more on tap for tomorrow. There's 12 more for the remainder on October 13th. I already told you that I mentioned that we'd like to reinitiate the town and school meetings, and the budget committee's open to that. A big aha to me, actually, was that the select board, when they give their budget to the when the budget committee starts going through the budget, I guess I had always assumed that the select board would give the budget to the budget committee that was under the tax cap, and they don't. They gave a budget to the budget committee that was $150,000 over the tax cap. So that to me was surprising. They said it's not abnormal, but I was like, oh, that's interesting. I mean, so that, to me, that's just the hard work. The budget committee really has the hard work of doing the chopping. And that's really surprising to me because I would think that the select board knows the departments and they know even better than the budget committee, like where the priorities are. So that really shocked me. I don't know. Let's see what else. Also, something from last week, which I'm gonna, maybe I think I will ask them about, is, Miss White noted that the town decreased the town fire debt payment last year by using impact fees. So that surprised me too, because
When?
we have this new fire station that was constructed several years ago.
Yeah.
And so it was constructed, but yet I'm hearing that that impact fees were approved so that would have been last year. So what, 21? They're on a calendar year. So in 21, they used those impact fees to,
Retroactive?
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, so they're saying that they told us that they couldn't approve our request for impact fees because it was a retroactive request, yet the fire station is already built, and there's been a report, Miss White said that was used last year. So I want to ask about that because I feel like that's contradictory and not consistent. So I'm going to ask about that. And I just read that in the minutes. Otherwise, I would have discussed it with the budget committee. I didn't catch that when I was
What
in the
meeting
meeting.
minutes are you referring to?
The meeting minutes from the budget committee from last week, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Did you hear the whole conversation, Andrew?
No.
so it appears as though
I heard something as I was walking out though about the tax cap and delivering the budget.
Over the tax
Over
cap.
the tax
So,
cap.
look,
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many moving parts on the town budget with, you all know with insurance costs, they don't have those until November, that type of thing. And so until they really have those numbers, it's hard to get underneath the tax cap. I can say that in all years, they've delivered it under the tax cap by the time the budget committee final votes.
oh, they do.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Well,
right
that's
now,
good.
it's still very early, and they're still going through their budget review process, which is why it's likely over. But that's not a red flag for me, being
Okay.
this early in the process. If it were
So
like
for
December,
me, insurance is only going to raise it.
potentially, we've had years where it has no impact, right? So it really depends upon the year. Obviously, this year with
Yeah.
inflation, I would anticipate an increase.
So you're saying that they will get it down under the tax cap before the budget committee votes. So by
I'm
next week.
certain they will do that. Not by next week, by December.
Oh, by December.
The meetings for the budget committee over the next several weeks are voting on certain departments, right? The budget committee will not be able to final vote until we have all the final numbers, which means we need the insurance numbers, we need, to understand all that. So they won't be able to final vote the town budget until end of December, early January,
But I think,
somewhere in that range.
if I'm right, Tara, your point is
Yeah,
that
okay.
they're delivering a budget
That's
that's
not a final.
right. Whereas versus the school, when we deliver our budget, we've already done a lot of
The culling
the
down
chopping
and
ahead of time.
That's what they're doing too, right? It's the same process. They're doing that throughout the meetings in October.
They being the select board.
No, they being the budget committee.
Well, right, that's what I'm saying. So I'm saying the select board the town has presented their budget to the budget committee, and the budget committee is doing a fair share of chopping, right?
not yet. We've just been listening.
But will, in order to get, eventually it
Yeah.
has to get under the tax
Right.
I
cap,
like
so.
budget reductions better, but.
Okay, whatever. We can- budget reductions, but
Right.
it's different than the school process a little bit. I just think the mindset's different.
Exactly.
Timing is different too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of the issue.
Well, I guess that's my question, is the only reason they're over the tax cap right now because they're projecting insurances to be too high, and if that's the case.
But no, they're using actuals right now as
current
placeholders.
year as a
So
placeholder.
if anything, that's gonna go up. Oh, well, you said sometimes insurance
Right.
goes down, but probability wise,
I just think for the budget committee, they have to have different hats on, right? Which is a little weird. You know, with one budget, they're getting
right.
I don't wanna say padded.
They're
because
getting
that's
it's
not
a
the right
working
word.
draft.
Right.
It's a working draft.
Until January, early January, right? It is a working draft on both sides until
Yeah.
it's final voted and we have an understanding, they have an understanding of the warrant articles, that type of thing.
I'm just wondering from the school perspective, I mean, is it it comes back to the philosophy of should we send over an inflated budget so that it can be chopped down, but not nearly as much as we want it to be, but we try to chop it ourselves. It's just, I don't know what the right philosophy is.
Philosophically, we've never done that.
No, we haven't. We send it over
We
lean.
send forward a responsible budget that's already gone through a process, so.
Before you, Dr. Jetty, right?
Sorry?
Before you, there were times where the school had sent over very inflated budgets. I'm just saying.
Okay, so let me just say, since I've been here, the process has
then.
been,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I'm just finding it fascinating, that's all. I'm interested.
And again, I wanna go back to that, so far the schools are not inflating their budget. So
know,
it's not, their level is not inflated, we don't plan on giving an inflated budget, so I just wanna.
Nor should we,
'cause
but
it-
I just
'cause
think
it's
it's
tricky
interesting.
because,
Yeah.
I think it's harder to make budget reductions to a budget that isn't inflated type of thing,
Right.
so. Just something to keep in mind.
Part of the issue
for-
with the town budget, while we're on it, is they have a tax cap of $175,000, right? That was voted from a percentage to a dollar amount years ago, and now they're stuck living by that $175,000 until a petition warrant article or another article gets on and voter approved to increase that or change it of some sort, if that happens. With inflations and with past warrant articles that were approved last year that are now rolling into this current operating year's budget, no matter what, they're already over the tax cap.
Yeah.
Just based upon what was voter approved last year. That's part of the issue.
make sure I understand it, so they have their budget.
Yep.
And they have all the warrants.
Yep.
So when you sum it together in the next year, are you automatically over the tax cap?
Yes.
Or does the tax cap
That's the issue.
rise above that?
No,
Okay.
that's our issue. That's the town's issue, right? Is everything that was voter approved last year is now rolling into the current year's operating budget, which is putting us over the.
But Ms. White did say
175,000.
that positions that were voted in do
Yeah.
get rolled into the base.
Right.
For example, the SRO.
SRO.
Yes.
That gets
Correct.
rolled into the base.
That gets rolled into the base, but things like a new fire truck or whatever it might be.
But those are one-time expenditures.
Right,
Well, no,
exactly.
it's an
Versus
annual-
the regular.
That will be a 5-year payment likely.
Oh, right, okay.
And Tara also mentioned that they use retro impact fees.
Oh,
That was
yeah.
what you missed half of.
Yeah, what Miss White said was that for the fire station debt payment, they were able to use in 2021, they were able to use impact fees against that. So I thought that was an interesting distinction between our request to have impact fees paid for,
I'm sure Mr.
after
Sun and
the
Mr.
fact.
Weber are watching, so.
I'm sure they are too. And so it's on my agenda to talk about tomorrow, and so this is a heads up to everybody.
Tara's on the warpath.
Yes.
No, I don't want to convey it that way at all. And there have been a couple times in different meetings that I've attended recently where I've tried to correct things. You know, I've tried to say, listen, we are not, you keep saying we're not ready to present our capital improvement plan, but you know what? That's incorrect terminology. We're not allowed to present it, okay? So I'm trying to correct some of that incorrect language. And I want nothing more than to work with everybody in these committees. So I'm not on a warpath, Liz.
I was completely joking.
That wasn't me. That wasn't me.
Kevin Brown actually has seen me on a warpath after my house was destroyed and my siding was put on incorrectly, and I went after the company to reimburse us,
No,
which
you're
they
seeing-
did.
You're seeing things that seeing things that you're just reporting back.
I'm
that
trying to
you-
understand the
right.
I know. I'm trying to understand the consistencies.
Is
So,
there anything else you want to add?
yes, sorry.
Oh no. That's all right.
Okay, so actually, Andrew, October 20th is the town voting on we're voting on the town budget. So you're saying that the selectmen, hold it, in 2 weeks, you think that
I don't have the budget schedule in front of me.
my schedule said October 20th is the town voting. So you think that the selectmen will have it under the cap by then? Is that? recall?
Maybe not.
I don't know. So I don't know. That was
Usually in October, you go through a budget review session.
the 20th and the 27th if needed.
Right, so the town voting is you're voting on the budgets that you can vote on. You're not gonna vote on all of them. Like insurance will remain open. right? Because you won't
So it's
have the number.
partial voting.
It's voting on the budgets, like.
Okay, yeah.
We're gonna vote on, general government facilities. We're gonna vote on, patriotic, right, which doesn't change, you know, cause there's.
Right.
We're gonna vote on all the budgets where we know
So
all the
I
numbers.
thought we would
within.
vote on all of them in those two, October
Some of them
20th
are gonna
and
remain open.
27th. Some of them what?
Some of them will remain open. You're gonna vote on the budgets that you can, and then you're gonna come back to the ones that you can't.
That's interesting. Okay.
Okay.
All right, very good.
And then you will do a final vote this end of December, early January.
Okay. All right. All right. Another interesting thing, hold on a second. So in case anybody here doesn't know, I'm sure Andrew does, the town has a bottom line budget, just like the school. I asked that question. I had a couple questions for Dr. Jetty too.
I don't know what that bottom line means. They have an operating budget, just like the school does.
That's, I was just asking if they, bottom line, is it, you know?
Yeah.
So they have the
Yeah,
authorities to
so the
spend
authority
that-
to
the various
transfer and all that,
items.
Yes,
okay,
yep.
all right. So you already know about the town administrator, that's good. I also found out that the town can carry over between 5 and 18% of their budget. I didn't realize that either. As of tax rate setting in 2021, they carried over almost 10% of the budget.
So it's like high nines.
So 9.68%.
We cannot do that.
We cannot do that. And they have reasons to do that because they have to pay certain bills and, you
They
know,
also
such
run 3 months of the year without.
in
actually
arrears,
any funding.
yeah, yep. So yeah, their fiscal year is a calendar year, so it's through December, so December to March till town meeting, they're just kind of, running without a formal budget. There were a couple offline questions, Dr. Jetty, cause you made the announcement about the land, purchase at the facilities meeting, so I reported that the next day. And there was a question from one of the members about, they wanted to know why we couldn't disclose the land purchase at that point in time. And so can you just talk a little bit about the process? I know that there's
I think we need to get praised.
I
Yeah,
know that
so-
there's appraisal, but at what point are we able to disclose
So-
details about the property?
We're waiting for the appraisal to come in, so we know exactly what an independent third party says about the value.
Okay.
And then we'll take that appraisal report to the board, and you'll give us guidance as to when we go public with this. And I also think that once we get that information, I think we have an obligation to the seller to share where we are and discuss, the public aspect of it. So for right now, I think we don't have enough information.
Okay.
So on that point, do we have, I don't, because I'm assuming, but I don't know this publicly or actually, do we have a signed purchase and sales at this point?
Yes.
We signed it.
We signed it, but
We did.
was it countersigned?
Yes.
She had already
They
signed
had
it.
signed
It
it
was
first.
Okay.
It was
I didn't see
pre-signed by the seller, so,
Cool.
so we do have a signed, you voted
Okay.
to sign. And then, we did a walk of the property recently, so I'm anticipating a report by the end of this week, but I'm also acknowledging it's a 4-day weekend,
Yeah.
at least in education worlds,
That's pretty quick.
so.
Yeah, that is.
Because they were able to make some assumptions and begin some work, pulling comps based upon the assumptions they made, and what they confirmed was their assumptions were accurate, so the assumptions they made electronically and by looking at,
Big surprises.
yeah, there were no surprises, so they feel that they can get this turned around pretty quickly, but let's say we have it by the end of next week.
Great.
And then I think we bring it forward to the board and we know exactly where we stand from a financial angle, and we can discuss with the seller and agents what the next steps are. And I would envision a press release that goes out to announce exactly all of the details that we've been discussing, and what our intent is, but until we get that appraisal, we can't really do that.
Okay.
Okay, so
Okay.
we'll wait till our next
Another
meeting,
question?
hopefully.
All right, just two more things. The budget committee questions document. I started creating this. Got a few questions 2 weeks ago when I went, and then there were a whole slew of them the following week. So to try to keep organized, I created a spreadsheet, as you know, and Doug knows, and thank you for working on that today. So did you want to go over any of these questions? Do you want?
I just want the board to understand the full scope of it, right? So first of all, Tara, thank you for putting it into a spreadsheet. You can see what is the question, who did it come from, how did it get generated? Some came out of the meeting and some came out of emails that have flown. When was it asked, and then when did we answer it? And then Doug and I spent over an hour today, although there were preliminary answers.
We had answered some before.
We had answered some, so I just plugged those
We
in.
spent a solid hour plus into Michelle's time, to be honest, to sketch out what those answers were. I feel that we can't answer them until the board has seen the answers, because again, Doug and I work for the board and we have an obligation to answer the board's questions. The other thing, I just want the board to keep in mind, when you look at this, I mean, it ends up being 13 questions that came back and forth. It's a lot.
Is that normal?
No, it's a lot to keep up with, and some of the questions, frankly, are, hey, they're nice to know,
Right.
but they're beyond the scope of official duty questions, and so, and
And
not
that's
that.
kind of why I wanted to document them, because then we can look at what are the types of questions that, how can we fend off some of these in the future by providing information, like what is, what, I don't know, so.
It did send correspondence to the chair and vice chair of the budget committee saying it was a long week for Doug and Dr. Jetty, that the DOE 25 was taking up a lot of their time and they would be delayed in answering the questions.
But I think we have to, again, get back to the whole conversation flow, right? And so, I know the budget committee's meeting weekly, the board's not.
Right. Yeah.
And I think we should not be answering this is how we create vacuums of, an email goes directly to Doug. I'm not in the loop on that. I don't know that he's answered the question, or an
Goes
email
to
comes to
me,
Tara
yeah.
and it gets forwarded to Doug and I'm out of the loop, or whatever. I just think we have to keep the communication clear and transparent. What I love about this is, we could have tabs at the bottom of the questions that we've answered, and we could start referring back and say, go see tab 7,
Oh, that's a good idea. All
line
right,
4,
I'll move that.
because it's
Okay.
already been answered,
Yep.
right? I like the communication flow piece, but
Yeah.
there are some things on here that, when are the solar panels going up? That's not a budget committee question. When? I mean, we answer that with facilities. We have a process to explain what the timeline is, on stuff like that. But on the flip side, I don't wanna not answer it, cause we know the answer to what we think is the
Right.
timeline, so we've given an answer here, but,
Yeah.
if this turns into just a series of rapid fire back and forth, that takes us away from other work
It
in
can't
order
be
to answer
weekly.
this.
It has to be bi-weekly answering. It's too much on Doug, especially 13 questions that involve research and time and.
Well, and we have other meetings where these questions, many of them, I assume, like the solar panels questions would be answered. It would be answered during a facilities committee or committee meeting or during our school board meeting. So,
There also were, there's thought experiment hypotheticals, because we keep getting asked the question, what would have happened? Well,
Right.
the answer from the DOE was a very brief memo, and it said, you need to meet this deadline, because otherwise it's gonna impact tax setting. That's the impact that DOE informed us of. We, as you know, as soon as we discovered the problem, met with the auditors, met with the attorneys, called DRA, called DOE, got guidance, which is follow what your legal people are telling you to do what they're telling you. They're gonna guide you through this. And so the hypotheticals of, well, what if we didn't listen to them?
Right.
I don't have time to engage in hypotheticals. We did listen to them, and we took the advice, and we were able to get this thing resolved, right? So I just, because it's a chess game. Well, if we don't do this, then somebody could do that, but if they don't do that, maybe this. There's too many rabbit holes to chase after that, right? And so I don't think that's for us to answer. Our answer is, we listen to our legal advisors and auditors and did what was asked of us. So that's how we've answered the question on here, but it did pop up a couple of different ways. It was asked a couple of different ways, so.
And then that one did have follow-up questions, so that's why I put those in there too. All right, so going forward, what I'm hearing is that the expectation is that these will be answered every other week. I'll collect them in the document, and then we'll go over them as a school board, and then I'll send them to the budget committee. Is that fair? Is that reasonable?
I don't mind if it's direct response to the budget committee. I think what they're gonna say, and I'm speculating, but that's the type of response and interaction that they have with the town. I don't think anybody's anticipating a same-day response by any means, but I think an acknowledgement and then a response is fine, right? If that's, hey, thank you for your question, right, I'll get it to you in a week, right? At least that starts to build that type of camaraderie and transparency and relationship that everyone's talking about, right? By saying, yeah, you know, we're gonna wait, and it could be, in some cases, over a month, right? If off budget season, it could be well over a month before a budget committee question's asked. I don't think that helps.
So Tara sends it to me, and Mike?
Well, I'm gonna suggest
Yeah,
that,
we
that's
need
the
a-
other thing, is I don't need a bunch of sends in my inbox and Doug's inbox.
Right.
I love the spreadsheet. Tara,
Questions,
I'll just put them
put
in
the question
there.
on the spreadsheet.
Yeah, it can be.
Give us all access to the spreadsheet.
Including
Perfect.
budget committee if they can, right?
Yeah, I don't care.
Yeah.
It's a Google sheet, although I do think,
It's a working answer.
I want a working answer, because I want the board, you might say, wait a second, Mike, that's not exactly, you know,
I
our
think you also
interpretation of
have to-
something may differ.
I think you also have to be careful because then it becomes a work document between the school board or the budget committee. I think you have, I mean, there are some disclosure things that you have to think about there too.
So right now, only Liz, me, Mike, and Doug have access to it.
I'm fine with that.
I
I don't know, I kinda wanna see
I'm not
it.
gonna read it.
I would,
Just turn in my head and look at my.
I would suggest that we open it up to the full board, but it's a work product. It's not a final answer until we agree it's a final answer to go off. And so if we, you know, so then it's not 91A, because it's a work product while it's being developed, and then once it's transmitted, it's,
Can you put draft on it somewhere? I don't know
Sure.
if you can do it
Yeah, I
with an
can
Excel
do
the same
that.
way you can do with
Yeah.
a Word, but
Yeah,
I think that adds to the, it's a working document.
yeah, I can do that.
Add a watermark to it.
That's what I'm thinking. Bright red.
they've added that, Google actually added watermarks.
They
Oh,
did.
there you go.
That was one of the reasons why people kept hanging on the word, I need watermarks, and now it's there. So, I don't know if it's in sheets or
I've
not.
seen it on Word, yeah, Word docs, but I don't know about that, but I can certainly put draft on the. Okay, so final decision on that, is it still every 2 weeks, or just,
They meet usually
I
every
give it-
2 weeks, but this is
I know,
because they're meeting with budget.
I mean,
They meet.
if we can
budget.
accommodate that,
Meet
if,
every week
if
and then it's monthly.
Yeah,
if all of the board has access to this, could we just go on a weekly timeline for the next few weeks? Because the budget committee is meeting weekly, I think that would show good,
there
I
shouldn't
don't
be a
know.
lot of questions because they should be doing the town budget is my guess.
I think this is also, we're in unprecedented times,
Mm-hmm.
right?
We
And I think
are.
a lot of this is questions stemming from September 19th
Yeah.
and what was presented, and that's just something we need to address and put behind us and then move into the budget questions.
You putting a watermark on it?
I'm trying to see if I can. I think I can. But you got my curiosity.
I know.
Anything else, Tara?
Just one other thing regarding the mowing, actually. There was an offline question asked of me, and I just want it to be out and open. You know, there's a belief by,
An offline question by who? The budget committee?
yeah. Are we mowing the culverts?
Mowing the culverts.
There's a belief that we are intentionally not mowing the culverts, and not doing so is making the water table in the building worse and causing the humidity problems in the building. So I just want to get that out
So
there.
just-
But does that count because it didn't come through us?
Well, so just to clarify, I mean,
Yeah.
the culvert is the tube under the road. So
Right.
we're not
Oh,
mowing the culvert.
No, the
But the
drainage
swale,
swells.
the drainage
drain
swale,
swell. Sorry, I don't have the right language.
In the back of the GMS?
To the right of the GMS.
Oh, where the
Yes.
bridge is?
But I don't, when we took the tour, is that even our land?
yeah,
It is.
that's
It
all our
is
land.
our land.
So the baseball and softball field that are like along 3A, that's our
Yeah.
land. If you look at maps, it says Litchfield Town Park.
Okay,
It's school district property, so it's, I don't know why it's labeled that by Google, but
I
okay.
remember
I
when
think,
they
Tara, you're
built
going
the
the
culvert.
opposite direction, aren't you? Aren't you
I thought
going
it
to
would
the
absorb
small
water.
side of the school, or are you going the big side of the school?
I was originally
By
thinking,
the soccer fields?
no, yeah, I think it's on the right-hand side, because that's closest to GMS, right? And those, what are they called?
Oh, by the by the houses
culverts.
right there.
By the houses.
So there's
okay.
a swale there.
So
too.
that swale,
It's a whale,
there's,
not a culvert.
so a
That's
couple
what
of
we
things. We're not gonna mow it because it's rocky and,
Yeah.
and we're not even sure that we own that.
Oh,
If you
okay.
look at
That's
the,
what I was wondering about.
if you look at the map, the property line, so the very corner of the building, the property line probably just skims it. It's
Yeah.
not, we don't think that most of that swale is actually ours.
That's a good answer.
All right.
And we have,
what I
like, when
thought.
you come out, there's that exit that comes out on that weird deck that allows
Yes.
the flow to go.
Yeah.
And that's bellied right up to the property line also,
That's
so.
what I
Dave had talked at one time about trying to, prune back the bittersweet that's growing in there.
Oh, that's
Well, they
That's
cleared it a little
invasive.
bit several years ago, and he talked about whether it makes sense to do it again now or not as well. But yeah, it wouldn't be mowing. So,
But to be clear, I have not observed running water in that swale.
Wouldn't it absorb it if there was extra grass in it? Or
Well,
would it make more
Blocks it.
grass?
it,
Yeah.
it runs a rain event. You
Yeah,
can have
and
water
then
run to and access that
it-
culvert, but the notion that
It backs up?
the vegetation is stopping the water from moving
Yeah.
is, in my opinion, misunderstanding the problem. And the problem is that 3A is a dam. Okay, so 3A has been compacted for 100 years along the road, and nothing is going toward the river. It's hitting 3A and flowing toward our property because of 3A. So if you really want to address a problem, just take out 3A and let the water naturally flow toward the river, which is what it should do, but it can't. And so that's why you have that underground river that's hitting 3A and is coming toward us. And then when it gets to the swale, it can get under the road at that point, but it's still under the ground.
Did you
It's
add it
not-
to your chart thing?
I thought there was a
Because it wasn't an official
culvert,
question,
for lack
it
of
was
a better
just,
term, under
Yeah.
you know,
3A,
things like that,
but
like
where the
if,
fields are.
Yeah.
if you don't
Still on the
address
other
it,
side.
it becomes,
So
you
where
know,
that-
people still believe
Where
it.
the swale is, right underneath the bridge that
Yep.
crosses, and then by Mr. LaSalle's house, like back in there.
I don't know if there's actually a culvert there. I'd have to double check that. The only culvert we've ever talked about is the one on the other end of the
Yeah.
property by Anna Lane. Because that's also an undersized culvert and would need to be upgraded to handle the amount of water. But I'm not sure that there's a culvert at that point. I'll have to.
I happen to know this because
Yeah,
I
I
know,
saw it.
I don't know how long ago it was, I'm gonna say 3 years, could have been less, could have been more. That culvert, or that swale, excuse me, was dredged, right, to allow for improved water flow. And I happened to make a mental note at soccer this past week, and that thing is really overgrown. Probably, if we're gonna get another few years out of the GMS building, it probably could use a fresh dredge on it.
So you just said, so you're saying what they're claiming too, that
But I'm talking the other side, that's definitely on school property.
other side.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's 100% on school property. That was dredged a few years ago, whenever exactly that was. I don't know who did it. They
yeah, I was
brought in
gonna
the
ask
big-
who does that?
It might have been
Did it-
Dalton. They brought in an excavator or something with this big scoop bucket, and they went. And
I
just
remember
did
that.
The whole
Was
thing.
it possible it was the town that did it?
No.
No?
So let's talk to Dave about it. The other thing you have to remember is you're dredging a wetland, which is
Illegal, isn't it?
requires permits and
You have to
DES.
rebuild stuff, yeah.
So we'd have to see how was that done, and maybe it was just done, because that happens, but I would say before we do it again, we would wanna make sure that dredging that is permitted legal process, so.
I think it'd be worth it just to look at if it in fact needs it, when was the last time that we did it?
Yep.
Right, and just, again, if it's a maintenance thing that helps with the water table at the school, then.
Anything else, Tara?
Nope, that's it.
All right, let's see, Facilities Improvement Committee, Tina.
Yes. And we met last week, and we had a very good discussion regarding the capital improvement plan for the school. Using the terminology that, CIP uses in terms of the ranking, I can't remember it now off the top of my head, but urgent, necessary, desirable,
Yeah.
desirable, whatever, we went through that and fixed it up, and then that was circulated to the board to review, but that's what we spent the majority of our time on, that, and then just a LMS construction update, which was positive in terms of being ahead of schedule and getting the library back on track, so.
Awesome. Emergency Management,
Haven't had a meeting.
Grading Reporting,
We didn't have a meeting, it got canceled.
Joint Loss, Elizabeth McDonald. We did have a meeting, it's quarterly, and I was on the phone because I had a school meeting, and I missed a chunk of the email, but it was very upbeat and happy, and it was really happy, and what was decided is the whole Joint Loss Committee is going to walk each school together. So you walk the school and say, oh my goodness, that's a hazard, look at all those wires, or things like that. So that's what came out of the meeting. Did I miss anything, Michelle?
No, that's for the yearly safety.
Yeah, and perk was canceled. School start time, Andrew? Website
I
committee?
haven't been invited to anything, so, no,
Website committee?
same thing.
You got an update from Michelle today?
Well, that website committee, is that just looking at current website, or is that also part of the new?
New.
The new.
So is he in the loop in all your meetings and
So it
stuff?
sounds like there's a meeting tomorrow.
Well, we're meeting with a designer tomorrow, the IT director and I, and to go over the design components to make sure that what we present to the committee at the next meeting, when we schedule it, will be what we're going forward with.
So what's my involvement on this committee?
Any meeting that we call of the whole committee would be to, you'd be, showed the designs, what we're gonna go with, going forward. We'll discuss beta testing, and as we get closer to that, and, we'll discuss how oversight and monitoring, happens, I presume. And the committee will monitor.
How many people are on the committee?
3 web content
There's a teacher from each
editors,
Oh, all right.
me, Chris, Andrew. Am I missing anybody?
No, I think that's right.
I think
Okay.
that's it.
And the whole intent is to have it be a standing committee, because when people say, I can't find the blah, 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 like the committee needs to wrestle with, where's the right place to put it? Why is that problematic for people?
Excellent.
I mean, one of the first problems I solved, I think when I got here, was getting the lunch menus unburied and making them clear, because
Yeah.
people wanna know where the lunch menu is. They don't want 18 clicks to get to it. So, you know, a committee that oversees, hears those concerns, I'm envisioning like a Google form. I'm upset with your website because, and they can submit it in, the committee can problem solve it. So hopefully we will, I don't know if there's ever a solution to websites, but it's time for a refresh.
Awesome. Wellness Committee.
We are meeting next Tuesday, 3:30 at CHS at the Learning Commons. It's our first meeting of the year. I put a post on Facebook today about
Great.
it. It's on the calendar, on the district calendar.
Good.
So it is everywhere. And that's it.
CIP, Tina?
I wasn't able to make the CIP meeting, so
Okay.
Tara subbed in for me. Thank you, Tara.
I went, yep. The CIP has a dual charge to also make recommendations for the ARPA funds for the town as well. So the town departments were asked to come in and identify which requests they wanted through ARPA versus warrant. They also, so that committee is, working with, I think his name is Jay Mankara from the National Regional
Yep.
Planning Commission. And so they're doing an impact fee study, which is gonna look at the degree to which any proposal is intended to compensate for growth.
Will that affect
and-
us in any way?
Yes.
We're big on
You
impact
know,
fees.
there was a member that said, you know, we probably are being underfunded right now for our impact fees. So, and Jay said it's just been like frankly too long since that was reviewed, and so they're reviewing that. So.
Great. New business, first reading, e.g. district communication policy plan.
So if you remember last meeting, we brought you the template. Now you're getting the policy with all the yellow stuff cleaned up and put into policy format. So it's the first read of that.
Okay. Do I have a motion, questions?
I'll make a motion to approve policy EG for first reading.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Again, oh my goodness. 5-0, abstain against, oh my God, I can't even speak, I'm tired.
It's late, yeah.
Old business, policy, second reading and approval.
So this is the emergency care one that we brought to you, and I think that this is actually a third time it's in front of you,
Yep.
because we did some cleanup, so I hope we got it right.
Yep. I'll make a motion to approve, policy EBBC/JLCE, emergency care and first aid.
Second.
All those in favor of EBBC-JLCE, emergency care and first aid? Approval?
Aye.
Aye.
What is the word I'm looking for? Denial? Against? Nope. Abstain, 5-0. COVID plan, COVID numbers, sorry, I hate COVID. Let's go.
We all do, but let me tell you that I just made an executive decision that we have to draw a line in the sand to come up with a color-coded system. So we sort of watched what was happening in the month of August, September, and I came up with the threshold that a low impact is when our student attendance, let's just focus on student attendance, when it's less than 5%, which is what it used to be pre-pandemic, that's low. And when it's between 5% and 10%, then it's medium. And if it exceeds 10%, which is double the normal rate it used to be, we have a high impact at that point. So based on that, you can see that we were low at opening. We hit those couple of medians. Remember, it peaked up a little bit in the two schools. It then tailed off to low the week of the 19th. And then the last week of September, we actually hit a high at Campbell.
That was because they've been together.
I put on it that anytime, if you hit one high in the week, it's a high week. I don't want to do, well, there were only 2 high days that week. It's like you hit a high, more than 10% of the kids out, I think we have to flag it. So those were sort of my ground rules. I checked with the principals, and nobody gave me tremendous pushback or any pushback on that. They may when we have a meeting and really think about it, but. So you can see the numbers at Griffin where it mirrors that. You hit those weeks in the middle where it was medium. At LMS, again, you see that kind of period of medium in the middle. And in Campbell's case, they hit 10.2%. Now, admittedly, that was, homecoming weekend?
It was, and the McDonald's got hit after 2.5 years. We had a McDonald down.
Oh, wow.
But-
That wasn't homecoming weekend. Homecoming was the weekend before, wasn't it?
Wasn't it the 30th or?
No.
No, it was the
No.
weekend before.
Oh, okay.
And then it all
But
kind of.
it was
It
just
was
after
around.
homecoming.
Just
Yeah.
several
After.
days after the dance.
Correct.
Right, and then it all started coming out.
Correct.
Because notice that then coming out of homecoming was the 23rd, right?
Correct.
So you were at 2.7, and then you had mediums all week and hit a high at the end. So to me, to call that a medium week, I just felt like we have to label that as a high, like pay attention, something happened that week. So this is your September report, it's on the website. Now the color codings are there, they make, I think, some sense. And then if we flip over to October, so we haven't filled in October yet, but Griffin is already hitting medians straight across the board. I mean, look, they had a 9.6. They were bellied right up to high at Griffin with the number of absences that they were
But there's
looking at.
also colds and allergies, everything is out now.
And to me, it's almost less about a COVID impact. It's really about what illness is impacting our schools.
Right.
Right. Now, is there a looming Disney effect as we go into, a long weekend? Maybe there is, but I think we just have to call it what it is, which is kids are out and it's having an impact. The middle school also was at medium, and the high school is at medium, and they're still at 9% absence rate, which is unheard of pre-pandemic. That would have had everybody's attention, like what's going on with the number of students who are out, so.
Yeah, and the cases are still in the teens or up there.
And I'm not factoring in the staff absences, but that's another thing that we're monitoring is
There's
staff
been,
impact.
yeah, I've seen that.
See, there are four positive staff
Yeah.
at Campbell.
Mm-hmm.
LMS has 0 and GMS has 0. So right now it's the Campbell staff who, and remember, historically, the Campbell staff was actually the healthiest. So that's what we're seeing in the schools at this point.
Thank you. The manifest, I don't know, did you get a chance to look over it?
It's over there.
It's over there.
Alright,
This
this
one
one's
has
already
3 signatures, and the manifest is not done, so.
Do you want me to? Spread the wealth.
This one needs one more signature, I think it's here. Community input, that was an hour and a half ago.
I think before we wrap and why the manifest, I believe today is World Teachers Day.
I didn't hear that.
Vogue Teachers Day?
World
Teachers
I did not hear it.
Day?
I did not hear that.
World Teachers Day,
I haven't seen that on
October 5th, 2022.
What?
It aims to focus on appreciating, assessing, and approving the educators of the world and to provide an opportunity to consider issues related to teachers and teaching.
There you
So,
go.
thank
feel-
you. Happy World Teachers Day.
Thank you. News to me.
First time in 30 years I've heard about that holiday, but that's
Yeah.
okay.
In fairness, I saw it today as I was going through Google and it popped up.
Were there teachers in the Google symbol?
But I'll
I
recognize it.
missed National Sons Day last week.
No,
Sorry, boys.
I gave up on post pictures of your senior day 900, 346. All right. Yep, that one's done. Should we wait till
You see
it's
that,
done?
right? I'm not
We
crazy.
call
World
non-public?
Teachers Day.
No, I looked it up too, because
October
I've never
5th.
heard of it, yeah,
Okay,
you're
all right.
correct.
Manifest.
Is that everything? Are we going into non-public?
We're still reviewing the manifest.
Do you
To
have,
sit here and review it?
do you have 3 signatures?
No.
No,
No, we can't go into non-public.
Okay, hold on here.
I did a lot of research on manifest this week.
It's such a gray area.
It is, and I was trying to find the best way for us to do it, so I did
Signed any of them?
email
They
a lot
haven't
of
made it down
people.
here.
And you're right, the payroll number is stuck in my brain forever now.
I don't know if that might be Doug's signature.
I haven't signed any of them yet.
Oh, okay.
I don't know who's that is.
Whose scribble is this one?
Oh, that's from last week, that's because we didn't have 3 people sign it, that is my scribble.
Okay.
Alright,
So is it-
here's
So it needs a third person then.
Oh, that does look like a Totten, do you see it?
Yeah. I saw the
Great handwriting, yeah, not so much.
Because I think Brian used to sign down the bottom, so I got
So does
confused.
this need a third signature?
That would need a 3rd, yep.
Which is
You and I
still
already
also a gray area.
Okay.
Here we are.
Supplies.
Michelle, here's the correspondence list. You can keep that, and I forwarded you the ones that
Great,
you
thank
checked.
you.
But if you see one that you're missing, let me know.
Oh, that's helpful, 'cause see, we just-
I think that was that.
Awkward silence.
I know. So Andrew, you said that actually the selectmen, when they're doing their manifest review, it's not a quorum, correct?
Yeah, so
So they're not actually in
that was
non-public.
clarified for me after the meeting,
Yeah.
where they're actually not in public or non-public session, right? It's an open invitation, come beforehand, similar to what the school has invited us to do beforehand. They don't have a quorum, so it's just a review, and once they go into public is when yes, we've approved a manifest item for $405,954.56, and it represented this.
So if it's an open invite, then they
What
only
happens if 3 of them
allow,
show
yeah,
up?
exactly.
I don't know how that works.
Okay.
It sounds like at least a couple of the board members don't
Coming
show up until
early.
the meeting.
Do they need 3 signatures or 2?
No, and you have
I don't know.
a separate one back here too. This one's hidden.
Oh, yeah. What's on that one?
Manual.
I think what would be helpful is the 5 o'clock time.
Yes.
Okay,
That
these
must
are
be
all
the-
set.
You people who still get an actual check.
Oh, wait a minute, is that my stuff?
Yeah, good find, yeah, I have to have 2 more
Oh,
to
no.
do,
Yeah.
so he can get his check.
Alright. In this one here, there was I'm gonna send this one around again. There were 2 in this one.
Yes.
You know,
And because there wasn't paperwork last week, now there is.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, is that what that one was?
Yeah, that was last.
It didn't go through, did it?
The top one
might have got it coming in.
This is very nice.
Yeah, this is helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome, sorry.
This one has 3.
7?
Yeah, yes, yep.
I might be in my pajamas, but.
Oh, yep.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, this is the one that has.
Since we're sitting here for a minute, I did wanna say, I did watch the budget committee meeting, Tara, and I thought, Derek Barker brought up a good point at the end in terms of the narrative out there right now is, or that we've even put out there is 1.5 million. That's a number that just keeps getting thrown around, but it wasn't 1.5 million, number one. And then from that 900,000 that we had to transfer, there were expenses for GMS that were paid out of the capital for the purpose, if people are gonna argue, you know, it could cover both, but for GMS, I think it would be helpful to have what was the actual. I just feel like 1.5 continues to be thrown around, and that's not
Absolutely.
the actual
Right.
number, number one. And number two, I think it would be helpful to understand that there were expenses paid for GMS from the capital trust, the expendable trust.
Yeah, so even before that meeting, there was 132,000 that the
Right.
board authorized in May for the
Yeah,
pre-bond.
did, yeah, right.
For Barker, and then even if none of this happened last year, I still would've came to the board and said, hey, there was another 113,000 from Barker after that in fiscal year 22. We should also use the reserve fund for that
Right,
too.
right.
Cause that was going with what the board had already been doing, so, yeah.
I just think it would be helpful to have, because it was, in that reality, it was a 750 something thousand number. I don't know if that's exactly right, but it not a,
1.506, if I remember correct, was the number in your spreadsheet.
but that was the
It's the
total
starting number.
expenses.
Yep.
That
was-
was,
It
that
added to
was the
3,
deficit
and
amount.
that was minus the revenue, but that was before we transferred money from the trust fund, and some of that money would have been transferred from the trust fund regardless of this happening, because it was for GMS.
Agree, but that's still the starting point that was presented, right? I don't know that there's a mistake or a misunderstanding out there. That's the number that was presented as the deficit.
That was a number that was, yeah, as a transparent starting
Right.
point, but it's
That's
it's
where
how you
it's
look
not-
at what the starting point too. It wouldn't have been the ending point, cause the board, in my opinion, would have already gone forward with that 113,000
Right.
for Barker as well, because
So
that
there
followed what the
wasn't
board
there
had done
that
before.
like 350,000 that had already been taken out, that had already been credited off of that, but the auditors transferred that back out too.
Right.
Yep.
To have it be
Yeah, so
in
the
this
board had
area.
already,
So-
transferred 350.
Right, we had already-
Core had, yeah.
Yeah,
With the board's
exactly. So
understanding,
there's
transferred
those two
350,000.
factors that
Yep,
would have brought it
Or is that all of them?
down.
exactly.
I have a pile here with 3 signatures. I don't know if there's any
Excellent.
others.
That's it.
That's it.
Anyone have questions then? Manifest?
Manifest questions?
Nope.
Sticky notes?
Want to send them down this way? I'll give them to Michelle.
Sure.
At this point, we would like to enter non-public session. Can I read that? Right. The dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee, or the disciplining of such employee, or the investigation of any charges against him, unless the employee affected, number one, has the right to a meeting, and number two, requests the meeting be open, in which case the request shall be granted. The hiring of any person, also the hiring of any person as a public employee, matters in which, if discussed in public, would likely affect adversely the reputation of any person other than the member of the body or agency itself, unless such person requests an open meeting. All those, yes?
I'll make a motion to go into non-public session.
Second?
All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
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 5 0, opposed, abstained, 500.